All right, it's 9:01 your time, it's 7:01 my time here in Maui. Hello everyone and good morning to our lovely entertainment finance class.
Wow, Maui.
Maui, yes.
Wow. Well,
Oh,
I feel so bad that
I
we're
know,
taking
right?
time
Oh,
from your
terrible.
vacation.
It's so terrible. Actually, it's not a vacation. We purchased a home here actually in the summer already, and we have been remodeling it now. It needed to be remodeled. Maui is not the cheapest place, so it needed to be remodeled. And we've been having remodeling now going on for, what is it now? It's now February, so since August. And it was a lot of living in dust and dirt and, redo. I mean, I've went back and forth to LA a few times, but then when LA had all these cases bouncing up, we came here in October, and then LA had all these cases and they were raising and it was insane. So I said to my husband, I'd like to stay here until this is a little better over there, And I had to be here anyway to watch what they're doing. Can leave contractors to their own devices. They all of a sudden build you a weird bathroom that you've never talked about, and things like that. And like, oh, that's great. I didn't really want that green, but oh, that's great. So it was good that I was here and could do this. But I mean, the work I do, I can basically do from anywhere. We're putting together a TV show right now that's hopefully happening in Europe. We're putting another one together that's actually shooting here. So everyone's online. I do a lot of work online. So for me personally, it doesn't really matter where I am unless I have to physically be on a set. It doesn't really matter. So therefore I said, now why don't we just stay here until all this COVID nonsense in LA just, calms down a little bit, because we have our other house obviously in LA. We live in LA. But it got me a little nervous when I saw the spikes there and this weird mutation going on. I'm like, you know what? There's no cases on Maui. Restaurants are open. Beaches are open. You can paddleboard with stuff to do. It's not the worst. So that's why I decided to stay.
That sounds awesome.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, if any one of you ever makes it over here, I'm happy to come by. We'll invite you for a nice dinner or drinks or poo-poos, as they call them here. Yeah.
That's amazing. There are no cases there.
I know, right? I'm so happy. They had over the holidays, because they opened up for Christmas and they had people come in. People had to have a COVID test that was negative. So they came in, had all these people, because the hotels opened up for Christmas. And I think at that time, they had a bit of a spike because people were gathering, and I don't know how that happened, but they did have a bit of a spike during like 2 weeks after Christmas. Okay. And then it went back to like 10 cases or something on Maui. It's different on Oahu, and on that island they have more, but here, nope, we're good.
That's great. Don't tell anybody. Everybody will go to Maui.
Yeah, and they can come. I mean, it's really nice. Again, because the people are now, they have to test negative before they come to the island, which I think is a good thing. I think during was it in December? At some point they still had the quarantine time where you had to have 2 weeks of quarantine. I still had to do the 2 weeks of quarantine when I got here, but I was staying at home, so 2 weeks of quarantine, being at home is not the worst. It's just stupid when you go to a hotel and you have to stay in the hotel for 2 weeks. I mean, why even go? Stupid.
Exactly. The invitation is only open to the 21 people or the 20 people here.
Correct, exactly. Oh my God. Well, I'm hoping this thing is over soon. It's about time. Damn it. We did all learn a lot from it, though. I think the industry got shaken up by COVID, and we learned a lot. I mean, I don't think it's ever wrong to be more hygienic in general on a set or in the world. So I think for us as producers and production company and for production teams, it's just a good kind of, learning to be more hygienic on a set and be more careful is, I think, in general, a good thing. Because with these COVID precautions, you also, I don't know if you heard this, also all the flu breakouts are not there. There's much less flu, there's much less of the general, what we have during this time, illnesses popping up because everyone is wearing masks and everyone is being more careful. So that's a good thing. It's also a good thing for production. I do think that another positive for COVID for our production is that because we are now nearly a year in and we couldn't really produce much, there's going to be a huge demand for content, because 1 year, no production worldwide, that's a lot of no production not happening.
Right.
I really think that for all of us who want to tell stories and want to tell different stories and unique stories and want to break into the streamers, I'm doing something for the first time with the streamer. I haven't done that before. I mean, they always buy my stuff, but I never really get to work with them. So they buy it as a license, but it's not like they buy my piece on the basis of the idea. Never done that with them. So it's the first time now. And that's a different experience altogether. So I will share that a little bit with you later. But I believe that there is, for anyone who wants to expand in the industry now, and anyone who wants to start, if you haven't started, I'm going to switch my phone off. This is a good time. And the fun thing is, and I'm seeing now, I'm getting all these Academy screeners, and to vote for the Academy and so forth. And I'm looking at these movies and I'm like, are you kidding me? The worst. Sorry. I don't understand how these movies are being made. I just don't get it. But you know, they are being made. So the worse, the weirder the story, it gets made. The weirder the context, the worse the characters. It's like they do stuff that I cannot follow. Now, I'm a total popcorn queen, so I like commercial. However, my point is, the most quirkiest stories are being made. I mean, this could have not happened even, I would say, maybe even 5 years ago, where they would make this kind of movies with cast that some of it is known, some of it isn't. You know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here with you saying, guys, you need to put cast in your movie. And then I'm watching these Passport Academy Award selected things, and they like, no cast. I'm like, what is going on in the world? So I'm thinking, good. Maybe there is even a chance for a good story, or even a semi-good story, to be told with no cast in this environment right now. This is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it right now. So I'm like, what is, I do believe it has a lot to do with COVID, because maybe there wasn't enough for them to pick from. I have no explanation for this. But I mean, there were a handful of movies that I thought were great. I need to look at the list and maybe write a little email of the ones I think would be worthy for you to watch. There was one I called Cherry. That was great. And that was obviously the Marvel team that did that, big team, but with the Spider-Man guy, I forgot his name already. But there are other movies that were there where I was like, okay, really, I don't get it. And then the PGA is sharing these Q&As. So I'm putting some of these Q&As in the modules right now, so you can see them. So Q&As of the current movies, of how they are being made and what they did and why they did it. I'm sharing them with you so you can see, A, what is the movie that we're talking about, and B, how these people got it made. And in many cases, these are producers that have not done much before. So I think it's very interesting to see how they got this movie to be even realized. So just watch out over the next few modules that we're going through, because I'm just going to plug those in whenever I get them. Don't distribute them really, because they're really just for people of the PGA, which is me. So I'm giving them to you just for the purpose of watching them in this course. So don't send them through the universe. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to do this, but we'll find out, I guess. Someone, I should probably talk to the PGA about this. But anyway, I think it is good to see how these movies made. What hurdles did they have to pass, and how did they get these ideas? It's like, really, how did you come up with this? Swimming in your bathtub? Wow, what is wrong with you? Very interesting. Anyway, so you guys, any questions of any of the things you have encountered over the last modules?
So yeah.
All right, Arnold.
The last Excel question on the quiz, not the quiz, but the midterm, like
question 2.
Yes, question 2. So I heard that it's like no one actually got the correct answer.
No, I don't think that's true. I think someone got the correct answer.
So I'm curious to see.
I think I did I not send you, Letian, because I think you got full, did you not get full?
I did, but like I don't know if I did
I attached it.
Right?
Yeah, for everyone who did not have the exact right answer, I attached a Excel. If you did not get it, that means it wasn't transmitted through Canvas. Everyone should have gotten the proper Excel spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is this. because I didn't prepare it for today. If we have enough time, I'll walk you through it. We'll see how far we go. What I'll do is I'll send you all the exact Excel for question 2 for all of those who have done the midterm. I'm not sharing it to the whole world because some of you haven't done the midterm yet. So you can see where the little mistakes were. Many of you, and I told you this class is not about math, many of you applied the right steps. I think there was just a handful of people. There's someone on here that didn't mute. I'm hearing someone not being muted. Let me see who you are. Who are you?
So Critical Role is a group of voice actors.
Hold on a second. Anyone who's not muted, mute yourself. I think it's Huan is not muted, and then who else is not muted? Someone's not muted. I don't know where you are. All right. Okay, back to Leitian's question. Anyway, so again, this course is not about math. I know there is math in the course, but it's really about understanding the steps and the financial sources available for you and how to apply them in these steps in order to get anything financed, film or television projects. It's more important to understand what is available to me today. How do I deal with the people that I can get into my financing plan and that would be available to me today? What do they need? How do they, what do I negotiate? What deal do I negotiate with them? And we're actually going to get into that a little bit today. What is their agenda? And how does it all fit together in the end? The reason for the Excel sheets is because things have an order. I just want you to understand the order. It is not important. I mean, if you do a math mistake for your business plan, that's probably not a good idea. So you might want to check your math. Even I do math mistakes when I put my finance plans together. It happens all the time. So to me, it's not about, is the answer totally correct? Yes, in the quizzes, I want it to be correct because you have to mark the right quiz answer. But in the case studies that we're doing and in the midterm and the final, you don't have to have the correct answer, because what happens with Excel sometimes, it rounds up in weird places. And I've had this where I did a case study with someone together in a Zoom session, and she had a different answer than I did just because the Excel was rounding up stupid. So, and I have no idea how to change that because I'm good at Excel, but I'm not that good at Excel. If someone knows, you can share that with us. So that's sometimes the reason why the result might be slightly different. But I don't want you to work. I mean, if someone gives me a question 2 that has like a total different answer that is more than twice wrong, then I will take out points because they did somewhere a major mistake. But if you're close, if you're within like 30%, I don't deduct points, and I'll just tell you the steps are right, but here is the right answer, and then I attach the proper Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to give it to you all so you have it, and then you can see where maybe Excel rounded up wrong or where you just did something wrong that is slightly wrong. So you just have it for your files and can follow it up. And if you then still have questions, just call me up and we'll do it together.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great. Who else? Arnold, I know you have a whole list.
Yeah, so my question jumps to the chicken and egg thing. And I know for Module 7, the secret business plans are very helpful, and we're working on our group project. But if the chain of events is, in order to get financing, you need a business plan with a sales agent's pre-sales or estimates.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get the pre-sales or the estimates, you need an actor. In order to get the actor, you need this. I guess the starting point is really the sales agent numbers. How do you make those up?
Okay, I make those up. Literally, here's what I do, and you can take it or leave it. Because I've done a few things, I'm sharing these few things with you in this class. You can use these things to apply them to your project. So in your case, Arnold, you have a thriller script that we read. It has very good elements. We'll give you some suggestions for it. Right. What you would do, you're doing already a PPM, which I think is great. But I think you also need a business plan to go with the PPM, because PPMs are boilerplate documents that, to me, they're not very saleable. But anyway, so you do the shiny little business plan with your mood pictures and stuff. You assume in your business plan that you're going to make 75% in international. And in your case, I would say, assuming that you get about 35% out of the US is not entirely unlikely. So that's where I would start in your case. You have a budget. You know how much equity you want because you're doing a PPM. You plug that number in and you see what else you're left with. If for any reason some of you say, we don't know how much equity we want, I would try to do two versions. I mean, I usually do two versions where I have an equity finance plan with an equity being 35%. And then I have an equity finance plan with the equity being 55% in case I'm not going to take a gap loan. The risk profile is usually the same. The reward for the equity investor is a little higher on the 55 because they're making more premium. So what you do is you put your business plan together and applying exactly the steps that we're applying here. Your business plan is going to have a disclaimer that says, this is a, these are projections. You know, the reality might be very different. And if you have the sales estimates not yet warranted by a sales agent because you don't have one yet at that time, you write a disclaimer saying the sales estimates still have to be warranted or confirmed by a bankable sales agent. You make a little disclaimer on that because right now you're making them. So that's what I do. When I talk to my sales agents, I'm usually pretty close with my numbers because I know, of course, what they want and what they're looking for, which is why I'm teaching this class. But sometimes even I'm wrong. So sometimes I'm off like by maybe 5 to 10%, and they say, we were not going to hit 75. I think we can only hit 70. Or if they lower, they tell me, you need to replace this actor that you're thinking of. Why don't we do this person or that person? But in my business plan, I always say, I'm going to cast a range of actors in the similar or equal level to these. And then I name what I want. So you have all of that because you have the tools. You know who you want. You know what numbers you need to hit. You know what pre-sale you need to hit. You know what you need in order to make this work on a piece of, as a finance plan. So that's what you do. You apply the knowledge that you have now, but when you give this to the world, you have to make disclaimers. For example, when you would include a director that you haven't signed on yet, you say, director is not attached, or if you have a director that you're talking to, you can say as a disclaimer, we are in conversations or negotiations are taking place. Something to reflect where you actually are, so people don't think this is all there. But it's perfectly fine to do that. It's perfectly fine to share where you are today and where your vision is, because you need to start somewhere. Any business that is in a startup position has not much. They're in the same position we are as producers. They have an idea that they think is great. They have some projections that they maybe talk to some people about. In your case, you learned what the projections need to be by being in this class. You're no longer not informed. You cannot unknow what you now know. So you have a knowledge because you took this class, you took an actual finance class, and you talked to me as an EP that has done this before, and you're using my advice in there, and you can say, we had conversations with experienced executive producers who lead us to these assumptions. You can even put that in there. You know, so there is a way for you to put everything together the way you have it now, make disclaimers in every place of what you have and what you don't have, and then just make sure that you are honest with where you're at. You know, I wouldn't, put a huge post-it on it and saying, this is all made up shit that I came up with in the bathroom. Don't do that. But just say, it's based on us having conversations with people that have done this in the industry,
So format-wise, would you say that a detail page of country by country should be given as the estimates based on those percentages, or better just to do an overall, the entire foreign will cover this percent?
People sometimes like to see the estimates. I usually put full sales estimates as a page in my PowerPoints, where it basically says, here's my full sales estimates. I'm not doing the pre-sales because I have no idea what I'm going to be pre-selling, but I'm going to give a percentage of the pre-sale that I'm aiming for achieving. But I will give them full sales estimates. And in your case, most of the sales estimates, our sales estimate sheets usually include percentages for reference for you. Regular sales estimates don't include those percentages, just so you know. You can use them for your calculations. So you can say, okay, I think this is what I'm going to get out of these territories. You can use that as a starting point, but I would probably take these percentages out when you put it in your business plan, So, and then you give a range, you give a wide range, you start low at the 70%, and then you go high up to like 140 or 135 or something, where it's a big range. That also protects you because you probably land up somewhere in the middle. You know, if you don't hit the 70, and you can also put a disclaimer in, if for whatever reason the sales agent comes in and says, I'm not hitting the 70, you will do something to make sure that the 70s are hit, because it's one of your criteria in your PPM as well, because it's an important project criteria that you're saying, I'm not just making a movie that I don't verify is wanted by the marketplace. This movie that I'm making is going to find verification in international marketplace of at least 70% of revenues. You make that point, so you obviously need to achieve that when it comes to the real world. So once you have your equity based on these criteria that you're putting into your PPM and your business plan, you can then go to the sales agent and say, okay, here's how much equity I have. What can we do to hit these numbers? And they'll tell you, because once you have equity, you become real for them, because that's the hardest step. When you're still putting it together, you know, they're more like, yeah, come to us when you have something tangible. Well, you know, having money is tangible, and that's what you're doing right now. And in order to get that first equity thing, you're going to do that business plan. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very well.
Good. Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
Hi, Jeanette. I have one quick question for module 6. In terms of co-productions and incentives, you mentioned in the module there's sometimes an opportunity for double dipping.
Yeah.
Where you hire a crew in country A, if I understand it correctly, and then while you shoot in country B, you can still get incentives for them. And so I was just wondering how the numbers work out. So the idea would be that the crew gets first credits in country A for the total amount of salaries, and then still gets credits for the total amount of salaries over the entire shooting day.
I'll give you a practical example, because that's the only way for me to explain it, by having done it, right? And it's actually not illegal, just so you know. I am working on a TV show that's going to be shot in Germany and Belgium. And you, Frederick, know Cologne is very close to the Belgian border. So we're shooting it in Cologne, in a studio lot there, a lot on set. And we're using a team in Cologne that will travel with us to Brussels for the parts we're shooting there. So this German team is, of course, a German expense. So that team, the DP, yada, yada, that entire team is in Germany. They are located in North Rhine-Westphalia. So I get the tax credit that I get from the production, no matter what, from the German state. I get that to begin with, and I think that's 20% right now. And then I get another expenditure from the region North Rhine-Westphalia, because I'm shooting in that region, and they have a cultural fund that is decision driven. But if they like the subject matter, they give you money too. So all of this works as an expense, because I'm spending money in that region, and I'm spending money in Germany. So those things are great. So now I'm taking my German team to go to Brussels, because I'm shooting stuff there. Now the Belgium fund recognizes them as coming to Brussels and staying there, and they're being paid there for the time that they're there. So if I shoot half my movie in Brussels, which is the case, for the time that they're there, half that salary is now applicable for their Belgium spend. For the time that they're in Belgium, I can make this a Belgium spend. So it's a thing that's local. So for my American actor that comes to Germany, he would be paid in Germany. For the time that he goes to Belgium, he's paid in Belgium. But because he's not a local, he doesn't live in Germany, I cannot double dip with that version of things. But the people that live in Germany, I can take over. They automatically get paid because they live in Germany, but they then get also paid because we're taking them to Belgium.
Okay.
For the time that they're there. So it's not the entire salary for the entire movie, but it's half the salary for the entire movie, because half the salary is taking place, half the production is taking place in Belgium. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and meanwhile in Germany, though, the German crew gets credits on the, you would get credits for the full amount of salaries to the German crew. Okay,
exactly.
okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Oh, that's nice.
Because Germany doesn't look at how long are you here. Germany just looks at how much money are you spending for these people. Here's what I'm spending for these people. But Belgium says, well, how long are you here with these people? And what are you doing here? And what's going on here? So there I can then use that amount and apply it to the Belgium side of things.
Great.
That has been the case for us, for the production that we're working on. I am not sure if the same rule applies to like Canada, for example, or other countries. I cannot confirm that for you because I just don't know. But it's definitely worth a question anytime you do a co-production, a question for your co-production partner in the country that you're using to answer that for you. And they all know. Like I knew this from my Belgian co-production partner. Otherwise I wouldn't have known that either. So I always use local partners to work with because they have the hands on the money that is locally and they know everything, and I don't have to educate myself and spend time to dig through that system. In the end of the day, I just want to know how much money am I getting, who am I getting it from, and what do I need to do to get it, and what do I need to keep doing to get it? That's all I want to know. Someone can give me that answer, I'm ready to go. Okay. Anyone else?
Great, thank you.
Sure. No? Then I will start to share my screen now.
I have one question. I know there was a, oh, I lost you.
Hold on
Jeanette?
a second. Hold on. Why am I not
Okay.
here? Do you guys see the, hold on a second. Hold on. All right, I'm back. Go.
Okay, a letter of intent from directors, actors, maybe even producers. I know there was some attached to one of the projects that you gave us, but do you have forms that you could share with us? Because I'm thinking those are really important.
Yes, important. Absolutely. What I use, a letter of intent is a legal document. You're not always going to get that, but you can get a letter of interest. And that's what I usually do because that's really all you need for a project. And because letters of intent go both ways. They're legal for both ways. I mean, if you can get a letter of intent, it's fine. You just have to think about what happens if this thing doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Sort of the thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to be paying a director out of my, savings account because I couldn't get this project made. I mean, most projects I get made, but even I have projects where I think they're fantastic and everyone else thinks they're crap, so I don't get those made. But I would usually do a letter of interest. People want to see that you had a conversation with someone that has a value and that someone likes the project and that they would like to be attached to it. And I can look for language that I have used in other projects for this. Again, I have to make a disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice, of course. I can share the things that I have done, take out the names, and then you can do with that whatever you want. Yeah?
Okay, great.
So you can talk to your lawyer about it and say, Jeanette gave me this. Is this good or should I not be using this? My hair is standing up. It's terrible. What's up with that? Look at this. It's like, hallelujah here. You never know which way to go. Anyway.
All right, thank you. That would be great.
Got it. Good. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes, Louis.
When you're bringing on equity investors, it's an inherently risky proposition for them. You have to detail the risks of the project involved. And even if you do everything right and you do your due diligence and walk them through every step, every hurdle, they still might not get what they expected at the end, just because of factors out of your control with how the success of the movie. How do you kind of find that next step of still bringing them on for future projects? Because I feel like a lot of times, even though you detail risk and they might not get what they expected in return, that kind of burns that bridge.
Of course it burns that bridge. Yeah. Here's the thing. Louis, let me just say this. If you have a project that follows the profitability rules you're learning in this class, the likelihood of that project not making money or profit is very low. When you don't follow the steps that you learn in this class, the likelihood of you screwing it up and losing money is very high. This class is designed to give you the tools to apply for a project to make a profit. When I've all these things that I've done with this finance plan, I've never lost money, not once, and I've done over 40 projects. It is when I go in and don't listen to my sales agent, and the sales agent says, Jeanette, I can only hit 50% with this thing, and I'm not sure what we're doing about theatrical release. When I was stubborn and I wanted to do it anyway because I believed in it so much, that's when I lost money. Because you have to know that the market needs to be able to respond to this. what can happen is that the sales agent gives you a projection. If it's a bankable sales agent, you can likely rely on these projections. But if you deliver a movie, he gave you the projections, let's say, and it's 75%, 70% of the international rights that you think you can make back. And you don't know it yet what domestic is because you haven't done a deal yet. But you know, usually it is domestic today is anywhere between 20 to 100%. It's so volatile, it's out there. But you should be able to make some domestic deal if it's a good movie. But here's what happens many times. You have a script, you have the sales agent, everything is great, and then you get on set and then you change things. You have a conversation with the director. You know that scene, maybe we shouldn't put so much action in here, or you start to rewrite stuff because you're going over schedule, or something happens where the script is now being changed. If it's changed in a way that the genre changes, then you're going to have a problem in the delivery. You basically now have changed this movie to become a different genre. Long story short is, if your movie that you're selling in reality comes out and then is really not good, which is on you, sorry to say, and the director, of course, then you run the risk of not making that money that you projected. But that means you've not done your job right. And frankly, if a producer delivers a movie that's not good, why should they be getting more money from an investor? I mean, I wouldn't give them more money. I would try to find out what happened here and why is this movie so bad? I mean, the script was great. Script sold. Why did the movie not turn out great? So there can only be the director changed something, the producer changed something, the cast might have been changed, which is usually not something that's allowed, but could happen. Something happened that changed the value proposition, and that something is usually big. If you keep it on track, if you actually shoot the script you want to shoot, if you use the director you want to use to direct, and if you not let the director talk you into changing stuff, and if you don't change the cast caliber, you should be able to deliver on these numbers that you projected, and then you're fine. So the risk at that point, after you got the verification from the marketplace, is with the producer and the director. And if they deliver a bad movie that then cannot get sold, then you're going to have problems. The numbers, however, in these projections are usually low. That they are aimed for the take column. The reality is that your sales agent will usually sell the territories somewhere in the middle between the ask and the take. So some of that cushion should make up some of the maybe lower domestic components. So maybe all of a sudden you can't sell the movie domestically. But if you do get some better ask prices or low pricing that's more towards the ask level, you could make up for that. You have to find ways to make up for things that you're not seeing coming in. Another thing you can do when you have the sales estimates and something happens and things don't seem to be going well, and you can see this movie is not turning out so great. You know, you have to figure out what can I do, where can I save money, but not in changing the genre. You have to figure out a different way to save costs. It is tricky after you gave these numbers, because then it really becomes your responsibility to make sure that you deliver on your promise. But if you apply what you learn here, you're going to make some money. I mean, there is no way that you're not going to make money. The risky thing that people do, they go out, they raise equity, they have maybe a large partner that gives them money for a large amount. The equity might be 100%, might be 60%, might be large, so that they don't go out into the marketplace to test the marketplace with pre-sales, and they don't go get proper sales estimates, and they use a sales agent who just wants the project so that they can make sales fees, because sales agents are selling things. They need product, so they might not always be entirely honest with the projections. So you have to be sure to get someone who the banks approve. But if you work with someone that you haven't talked to the bank about, and this happens all the time, by the way, then you're ending up in this limbo space, because you talk to a sales agent who gave you probably not bankable numbers, or they may just look favorable and you couldn't reach them. And then you have so much equity in there that you're not going to go through the pre-sale components. Pre-sales give you feedback. If you cannot do any pre-sales, you know there's something wrong with your project, because that's the important feedback that you need from the marketplace. If you get none, you already know, okay, this is not going to be an easy movie to sell. You already know at that point. So if you don't do any of this, you don't do pre-sales and you don't take a bankable sales agent and you just go make the movie, this is very often the case where investors get burned. It happens all the time. It's not rare, unfortunately. And then the investor, of course, says, well, you didn't make me any money. And now you want to come back and give me money? What has changed? And then, of course, you can have a conversation with them and say, listen, I made this first movie. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I thought this is the way to do it. I trusted the wrong people, and that happens. Some investors understand this, and some investors might just say to you, guess what? It's your first movie. Tell me how you now want to mitigate the risk that you took with the first one. And then you can walk them through saying, here's what I'm changing this time around. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this instead of that. And you walk them through how you've now learned to mitigate your risk. And that might open the door for you again. But it needs to be a conversation where they understand how you are now changing your course in making sure that they're protected. It's a long answer to a short question. I apologize, but I hope it makes some sense.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it basically, if we follow what you've laid out, if we follow the formula and mitigate our own risk by investing in getting financing from lots of different sources, then it's not as big of a problem at the end of the day. But no, that whole showing what you're going to change is the direct answer that I wanted. So I do appreciate the entire journey to that answer.
Yeah, and I think they'll get it because you're basically financing a movie in a way that if these investors, they usually come from other industries and they're used to seeing certain financial models. This model is actually very similar to what they see. When they buy a company, it's a similar kind of financing model where the equity is a certain number, everything else is leveraged. When they buy real estate, again, it's a loan from a bank. There is a certain amount of down payment, which is the equity. Everything else is leveraged. They are fairly used to seeing this kind of structure. So when you explain this to them, saying, I'm leveraging, which is what you're calling this, I'm leveraging your equity by employing bank financing and pre-sale financing, which is basically like a contract you would have if you would have another company and you sell shoes and someone is buying some of your shoes that you're going to be producing. That's what a pre-sale is. You just now pre-sell some of the shoes that you will be producing. And here the same thing. You pre-sell some of the countries that you will be selling. It's the same method. They actually understand this structure. You will be surprised better than you think because they're used to seeing this in many of other transactions that they might be investing in. So it's not that big of a leap to say to an investor, I'm not going to ask you for the entire amount. I'm going to leverage what you're giving me through bank financing and through contracts, through distribution contracts that I'm getting. Take the risk of you and also confirming for both of us that this thing has value in the marketplace. They will appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Sure. So now I think I can start sharing my screen if I figure this nonsense out here. Let's see if I can do this. Share screen. Are you all seeing my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Good. So we'll talk about a few things. Some of them are familiar to you because you've read about them, and some of them will be a little new. I'd like to talk to you about when you do a deal with any contractual partner, it is important for you to understand what the agenda is. An agenda sounds negative here, but it's actually positive. What the agenda is of the other contractual party. What do they need? What do they want? How do they make money? Because if you understand, and when you understand their profitability profile, as I call it, you can negotiate from a position of power. You can negotiate from a position of knowing and empathy, and you can understand what they want. In many cases, you can actually give them what they need and still get what you want. You just need to know what it is. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the waterfall. We're going to look at a waterfall for a theatrical movie and, of course, a non-theatrical movie. So we see the comparison. What does it look like for both? We'll talk a little bit about transparency in the waterfall. We're going to go a little bit more into the free money sources. We're going to talk a little bit about what the business plan should entail. And we're going to talk about all these different kinds of producers. I mean, we have like all these different kinds of producers. What do they actually do? And what should they be getting for what they do? So let's start with understanding the profitability. If I can get to that slide. Come on, get there. Oh, that's just great. My computer is freezing. Oh, there we go. So when we talk about the different sources that we're having a bank, we have an investor, we have a producer, we have a sales agent, we have a mezzanine lender, we have a tax credit lender, also called subsidy lender. We have a post-production service, and we have maybe the music investor. These are the main sources that we've talked about. We can also add, brand integration, but I'll get to that at a later point. So when we look at these different parties, they have different terms that work for them, and they have different things that they want. So when we look at a bank, the bank looks at how much collateral do I have to secure my investment, my loan? How much can I charge in interest and fees? What does my risk look like, and how can I reduce that? What term can I allow for this, for the repayment? And what happens if the money is not repaid? So for the bank, it's about collateral. The bank looks at the sales estimates, they look at the sales agent, and they decide how they value this collateral. Collateral is nothing else but potential distribution revenues. Again, they don't look at domestic because they don't care about domestic. It's too volatile. They set that as zero. It has no value to them. It only has value to you as a producer, and it has value to the equity investor. For the bank, domestic does not exist. Domestic meaning US distribution rights of any kind, unless you've sold them. Now, if you've sold them, you pre-sold them, then yes, you can use that contract, and the bank will bank that contract. In that point, it does have value because it's a pre-sale contract. In any other scenario, it does not. They look at the project, and they call it the volume. And the volume for them is, what is the loan amount? The higher the loan amount, the lower the fees. The lower the loan amount, the higher the fees. I know it sounds weird, but it's because they need to make money. So they have kind of a threshold of a loan fee that they'll be charging. And it's basically sometimes just referred to as a loan fee, like initiation fee, or they just call it a loan fee, I think. It includes all the costs that they have on their end. And they will also charge a legal fee because they, of course, have to hire a lawyer to be part of the transaction at the closing time. And you pay for that. So it is sometimes the case that the loan fee and the legal fee are, I don't know, $50,000, and your loan is $300. So it's like stupid. So there needs to be a minimum volume that you need to hit for them in order for them to make sense for this loan, in order for you to make sense for the loan. And every bank has a different threshold. So for me to tell you the bank's threshold starts at a $500,000 loan makes no sense because every bank is different. Many banks are okay with low budget, but some banks just don't. So you would have to ask the bank, what is the minimum loan amount that's also for you, Arnold, by the way, what is the minimum loan amount that you will undertake as a loan for me? I mean, in general, and they'll tell you. And then they tell you what interest they will charge you. The interest is lower for the pre-sale contracts because they have a contract in hand, which is a security for them. And it's higher for the gap loan because they have no contracts in hand. They're just hoping that you'll be selling those rights that you haven't sold yet. So that's why the interest rate for that is lower. In the end, you'll get a blended interest rate that kind of combines the two. That's how they make money. They look at the risk for them. The risk is the sales agent. That's really the risk. And the pre-sale distributors, that's the other risk. Who are they? And they manage those risks by applying discounts. And they manage those risks by saying, with this sales agent, we're not going to give you 20% of your budget as a gap loan. We're only giving you 10% of a budget. So you will get a direct feedback from them, what they're willing to do based on their profit assumptions, what they can make and how the risk flies for them. So the bank really has a profit by charging interest, by charging fees, and by reducing the risk profile, and by working a term that makes sense. So in many cases, the term for this bank loan, for the senior loan, is between 1 and 2 years. It's usually not longer. And that's why it's good for you to know what your interest would be for those entire 2 years. They charge everything up front. So you have paid that already. So for them, making it a longer loan, yes, it makes them more interest. They're not going to usually get more of a loan fee. They're not going to usually do a higher loan. It's not necessarily ideal for you because most of what they are being paid back on is paid back during the first 2 years. So you can also talk to an investor in knowing this, that they will start making money in that same time frame. When the bank is paid back, that's when the investor is going to make money. Somewhere between 18 months and 24 months is when the first monies to these investors are being received. This is something for you to keep in mind, simply because it's driven by what your bank loan is. The investor, they also look at collateral. They will look at, in this case, what is the bank not taking? What is available for me to make money from? And they will look at who is in front of me, who's recouping in front of me. They will look at how much premium can I get and how much back end can I get away with. Back end is, in the investor's case, the profit participation and the ownership participation in the IP. The premium for an equity investor is probably always going to be around 20%. That is the money that they get on their money. So if they give you $1 million as an investment, they're going to get paid back $1 million too. And afterwards, in addition, they get another back end profit participation on top of that. So when you negotiate and establish their ROI, you have to add both together, the premium and the profit participation that you're thinking you can make, because that becomes part of your return of investment percentage, which they're going to want to know. They want to know how much ROI can I get, and that is comprised of the premium and the back end profit participation that you believe you can achieve and what they actually then achieve. So they will look at that. They will also look at the level of the project, and it comes down to, for them, you know, what is the level of the project in relation to its commerciality, its cost, of course, and how much money can I make out of domestic. An equity investor really looks at a project including the US as a potential revenue source. The bank doesn't do that, but the equity investor does that. So they want to see, you know, what is estimated there in addition to what the rights are that I might have available to recoup my money back. There are ways to incentivize the equity investor. And you can do it by creating a corridor, a collateral corridor is what I call it. I call it ring fencer country. So here's what that is. Your bank will say to you, I'm going to give you this much gap amount, and I'm going to give it to you based on these unsold rights. So they have a bunch of rights that they're referring to as collateral. You can have a conversation with them in the event that you have a lot of unsold rights, and the gap amount might just be 10% of the budget because the bank decides to only give you 10%. You can then say to the bank, I'm not giving you all these unsold rights because you don't need them. You're only giving me 10% of the budget as a gap loan, or 15. That means you only need a certain amount of unsold rights to cover that, to have your 200% coverage. I'm going to take these and these and these rights out. I'm going to take out Thailand. I'm going to take out Israel. I'm going to take out Turkey. These are low-level countries for you that you don't really value anyway because they're, you know, shaky. Throw Greece in there and it's really shaky. That the bank will say, yeah, we don't really care about these countries. They're so volatile. We're probably not going to see anything out of them coming out of them anyway. You can take these little countries and you put them into a separate bucket. These countries are now excluded from the collateral that the bank will hold. They become available to you as collateral. You can assign those to your equity investor, and you can say to your equity investor, listen, these 4 territories, Israel, Turkey, Greece, and whatever else you just mentioned, Thailand, I guess, you can recoup from those territories in first position because the bank is not recouping from them. It's usually a smaller amount, but it basically does the following. It gives the equity investor money the minute you sell these. And funny thing is, these little territories always sell first. I don't know why, and I don't know what it is, but the buyers in these territories are so grateful that they're being given attention. You know, I woo them. When I go to Cannes, we usually rent a yacht. Obviously, we don't do it right now because there's no Cannes Film Festival. But I invite them on the yacht, and I give them a glass of champagne, and they get some cappuccinos. And I woo them, like the Thailand and the Israel. I just, you know, oh, so great that you're here. And they're not used to this because they're usually seen as the stepchild of the buyers because they're like, yeah, Israel, who cares? As an example, people do care about Israel, of course. But point is, you can make them your friends, and then they become the friends of the equity investor. Because the minute you get to those to be sold, you can get that money straight to the equity investor. And they will be surprised because all of a sudden they get money while you're putting the movie together. They're like, what? What's going on? or maybe shortly after you delivered it. They're not expecting to see anything for 2 years, and now you're giving them something in the first 3 months after the movie was finished. It helps them also to reduce their risk, because they usually don't get their hands on any of these territories in first position. They have to wait until the bank recoups. So that's an advantage recoupment position that I often use if I can get away with it. I don't always get away with it, because sometimes banks are stubborn and they want everything. And if I have a mezzanine lender in play, I usually can't make that happen, because then the mezzanine lender wants these territories, because the mezzanine recoups before the equity investor recoups. But if I don't have mezzanine and my bank is giving me only like 10% or 15% gap, then I have that conversation with the bank and say, I want these territories for myself. And in many cases, it's had to work. So this is what I called an advantage recoupment position for an equity investor. I would, when you do a business plan, just say that you will aim to make it happen. You cannot obviously confirm it, subject to the conversation with the bank, but it is a nice little kicker, and it gives you an advantage with any equity investor conversation that you're going to have, if they know there are going to be certain territories that they will basically have a ownership on entirely, meaning the equity investor. They're theirs. They will like this. That's what I'm talking about with advantage recoupment. And it's obviously explained a little more in the module, but just to give you an idea. Now, as a producer, yeah?
So the corridor, though, only put some priority recoupment up until they're 120% and then becomes part of the general waterfall?
Yes,
or...
yes. Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, there are investors that I had, honestly, that asked for those territories in perpetuity, which means they own them forever, second run, third run, whatever. I wouldn't necessarily do that if I would be you as a producer. It's nice enough for you to give them the first run revenues, and that'll be it. Everything else goes back into the waterfall, because otherwise you're losing money as a producer. Make sense? Okay. As a producer, you have different ways of making money. Obviously, you make money through your producer fee, and you make money by negotiating deals that will not cost you a lot of finance fees. So your idea always is, what do these guys want? What is their agenda? What can I get away with? Which is why it's important to understand their profitability profiles. So for you, you're obviously looking also at the upside in the end, because you have to pay a lot of people before you make any money. So it is very important for you to make sure that collateral, that bucket of collateral is assigned in a way that is not everything giving away, and you have still second run rights, third run rights available to you. Like what Arnold said right now is important for you as well. You want to make sure that only first run revenues are applied to any of these people getting paid. And then all the other revenues stay with you. That will get you like a royalty income. You will make money anytime, even later, 10 years later, when the movie makes money. I think I mentioned to one of you guys, my movie Experiment with Adrian Brody and Forrest Whitaker was just up with Sony, and it was $150,000 that came in 10 years after the movie was produced. I wasn't even, it's like, oh, great, thank you. So that stuff happens, and that money goes to the producer, because at that point, there's no one else there. I mean, I would, in this case, I'm also the equity investor, so there's that. But you would have to share some of that with your equity investor if you have an equity investor still in the product right there. You can limit your contract with the equity investor if you want, but most equity investors are not going to go for that. So for you, it would have meant that a portion of this 150,000 would have gone to the equity investor, and the balance would have stayed with you. But so your idea is, you want to make sure you make a producer fee that's feasible, because you have to do a lot of work. Your fee, the whole producer fee component should be about no more than 15%. Your fee should be the highest fee in there. So when you pay other producers, just make sure that you don't pay them more than what you're actually getting, which, trust me, they'll ask for it. So your job is to make sure that you keep the distribution costs low. So when you do a deal with the sales agent, make sure you're not paying a high distribution fee there. Don't ever pay more than 25% if you can. If someone asks for more than that, they have to tell you why they ask for more than that. Are they giving you money? Are they doing something special? Are they making you coffee every morning? What's going on? So you just need to know that, those are the ranges right now. The sales agent, if we talk about the sales agent, the way they make money is they make money off the sales fees. They make a little money potentially on the distribution expenses if the contract doesn't include actual verifiable out-of-pocket expenses, which is the sentence it should include. Some people just say 1% distribution expenses, and then it's whatever the sales agent decides is the distribution expense. And if you don't audit the sales agent, you don't actually know. So, you know, some sales agents make money off that. And they also make money off the marketing fee that you give them in the beginning. That's the budgeted fee that you put in your budget that they use to do a trailer, they use to do a poster, they use to go to the film markets. It's an advance fee that you pay them to do their job. So that's something to think about. You have to keep that cost low, but they're making money with it. So if it's too low, it becomes less of an interesting project for the sales agent, because then they're not going to push it as hard. You have to think about motivating your sales agent as well. What is the bracket that motivates them? What is it that makes your movie special so that they sell that? Because they're going to sell other movies with your movie. They're not just going to go with your movie to the marketplace. So you need to give them enough that they're happy, but you have to be in a place where you're not losing your profits, because now they're eating away your potential profits. You know, when we talk about Louis' question earlier, if you do a sales fee that is higher than what you projected, you're already eating in your profit. So you have to be careful about that. The sales agent will look at a contract term that is long. They want the longest term possible. They'll ask you for 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, because they want to stay attached to the project for the longest period. And the reason why is when they want to go to a bank to get a loan for their company, which some sales agents do, the bank will say, well, what are your assets? And then the sales agent says, well, we have all these movies that we can sell. And look how long we own them. We own them for 20 years. Well, it's not your responsibility to get the sales agent the bank loan. This doesn't concern you. But that's the reason why they want long terms, just to understand why it's important for them. So your job is to keep the term as short as possible. Give them a 5-year term, 7-year term, something like that. They should be okay with that, because that makes it possible for them to sell the first run, which is really all you want people to do at this point. And you can up it by saying, if we reach those sales estimates that you have projected, we will up it for another 7 years. There's a conversation to be had. But their profit profile would be the longer term, the better, because it enables them to get a loan, a line of credit often from a bank. So that's the thinking behind this. They want projects that are easy to sell. So they want A-level projects that are packaged. Could be a low budget movie with a strong cast. Could be something that they look at and say, we want this out fast and easy. So for them, it's really about getting something from you that is ready to go, where they can see immediately, this is going to be easy pre-sales, it's going to be easy sales, we love this, we'll take this. The way they react to you will indicate to you, is that the case with your project? If they take time to respond, if the deal sucks, it's usually not a good time. It's usually not a good sign. And you're not going to have a good time either, yeah. So there are indications that you're getting back without them telling you. Really, not everyone is honest and not going to say to you, your project's really not great. They're not going to be honest in telling you this, because they don't want to lose their relationship with you as a producer in case you have the next hit coming up. So they might not always be that honest in saying, we don't really like this. They say things like, if they pass on it, they say things like, oh, it's a great project, but our slate is full, which basically means they didn't like the project, because it's a stupid excuse. Or they say things, and that means you have to, think about, okay, what can I change here to make it more interesting? And sometimes, what I always do when I get a mixed feedback, I call up and ask, and I just bug them, like, just be honest with me. What should I do? What can I do to make this more valuable? Or is it just not entirely your cup of tea? Which is okay, because it just cannot be. Sometimes it's just not their cup of tea. But the more feedback you can get, the better. So find out what is the easiest for them to sell fast, what they need in order for them to do their job for you. So, but when they look at these things, they want to make money, highest fees, they want to make longest terms, they want to make good marketing fees. So they're going to ask you for a bunch of money up front as in when you're closing. Don't give them any money before you're closing. So if anyone asks you, for example, I've seen sales agent asking for money just to do sales estimates. And these poor producers that didn't know better paid them for that. Don't ever do that. That's just wrong on every place. And this is terrible. That's a sign for someone who's a crook. You should never pay anyone anything until you're like a sales agent in this case, until you actually close your movie and you know this movie is going. Because there's no point for you to pay the sales agent if the movie's not going because he doesn't have anything to sell. So that's the logic behind that. But when you look at the mezzanine lender, they look at the collateral that's available for them after the bank has recouped. So they look at exactly the bank loan and see how much money does the bank need to be repaid and how much is then available for me, for my loan. And that's how they decide how much money they'll give you. So it's important for you to keep the collateral small with the bank and try to get away with as much as you can for the bank not to hold on to for the equity investor. For the mezzanine investor, it doesn't really matter because the mezzanine investor is going to look at the loan. They're just going to look at the loan amount and say, okay, they take this much money away from the sales estimates and then this next bunch is for us. So that's what they look at. They want an upside as well because they want to make sure that the movie has a potential to be sold in the US. And they will look for some feedback on the US, even if it's usually not really meaningful, but they want you to have a conversation with them about what is their plan for the US? Did you have conversations with someone? What are they thinking? They don't really need a deal, but they want some information. Their job is to charge you a premium, sometimes even a backend, but they're definitely going to charge you a large interest. So they make money with the interest. They make also money with executive producer fees that they will charge you. They will also charge you legal fees. Some mezzanine lenders do not charge executive producer fees, but then they charge a loan fee. So whatever you call the baby, you're going to pay something there. So in these fees and these interests is what their profit lays into. And of course the back end. But they really are driven by upfront costs. So they're driven by the interest and they're driven by the loan fees that they charge. That's where their mindset is. So if they charge you as a mezzanine lender 15% interest, don't be surprised because that's a normal level of interest for a lender like this. Sometimes it's even 18%. I've never seen 20, but they're pretty expensive, these loans. So just know that this is how they make money because they take a risk profile that translates for them into charging a lot of money in these fees. And they're charging it up front, of course, so you pay them up front from the loan amount that they're giving you. They want to have a term that's probably about 5 years so that they have enough time to recoup their money. Now, if you think about 15% for 5 years, imagine how much money they're making. So it's a very expensive loan. That's why I always say it's probably one you want to stay away from, because if they give you $1 million and you pay 15% every year, that's $150,000 every year if I calculate this correctly. So times 5 is 500, that's $750,000 on $1 million. Who, you know, it must be insane. They make this money because these loans happen all the time, but that's how they make money. For the tax incentive lender, they are looking at the various tax incentive regions and subsidy regions that you're shooting in, and they value them as to how do they pay me back? Are they incentives that have shown to change their regulations and rules all the time? How long does this incentive already exist? Is it a viable incentive? So they're looking at, A, what is my risk with this incentive region that I'm cash flowing for you? And then they charge you an arm and a leg upfront too. So that's a one-time fee that could be anywhere from 5 on the low end to 25%. So that's how they make money. They make money on charging you, but there's a second place where they make money, which is the contingency. When you give them, when the estimate is made for what you're spending in the region, the contingency is not included because the contingency is a contingency which may or may not be spent. Now, if the contingency is spent, which usually happens, unfortunately, there is additional money that is spent in the region and additional tax credits or subsidies that are being applicable here. Guess who gets that? Not you. No, it's going to the tax credit lender. If the lender is a bank, then yes, it goes to you and it's going to be put together into your bank loan. That's the only exception to that. But if it is a tax incentive lending institution that is not a bank, it's just a lender that's made up by private investors, they get to keep this. So they don't mind if the contingency is high, if the bond company asks for 10% contingency. They love it. Your job is to keep the contingency low, so you A, don't pay the completion bond company a higher completion fee, and B, this tax credit lender is not making money off you in the end. But they look at these two things in how they make a profit. So it's important for you to understand that they will likely snatch that up. You can ask for any additional monies that's being spent on the contingency to be paid to you. You can ask for that. You can ask the lender for that. In many cases, they're going to say no. But you might just have a lender that says, you know what, we're making good money with you here. We're going to do it because, you know, it's okay. We're charging 20% up front. We're not going to have to make money in the end. If you can negotiate that, that would be good for you because that money is then available to go into the recoupment corridor. And because you haven't really estimated to get that, that's extra profits for you that you really didn't count on. So it's a conversation worth having. When you work with a post-production house or a visual effects company, you have to think about the fact that there are many, many, many visual effects houses and many, many, many post-production houses. So you are really in the driver's seat in that conversation. You want to push it as far as you can. Many post-production houses will defer 50% of whatever the post-production budget is. So that means your post-production budget cuts into half the minute you're closing. And that means for you, you're going to have to raise less money. What they do is they defer it to the recoupment position, and then they're going to add a deferment premium, which is usually around 10%. That's okay too. Now here's how they make money. They make money by charging you a slightly higher fee for the post-production work, because that's just what they do. And they make money on that premium because they know that when they are recouping, the deferment is part of production costs. So what they will require you to do is that they are recouping right after the bank recoups so that the production costs can be in a level where they're not recouping after the equity recoups. And at that level, they're pretty secure because they're recouping before equity. So you need to know for the equity investor to say, you are recouping after production costs have recouped and after the bank and the senior loan and the junior loan have recouped. That's usually a language that keeps you safe. And in that case, the deferment position for these post houses or for anyone else who's willing to give you deferment is pretty strong. And this recoupment position right after the bank is not unrealistic. I mean, in our structures that later I will show you where it sits in certain cases and then where you can bump it up. But because the deferment is a post-production house, which is a line item budget, it is okay for you to move that up in the recoupment position, and it then becomes something you can ask for other people too. Like you can ask the DP, the director, you know, everyone who has a higher level fee, can you defer some of your fee so I can make this movie happen? And I'm putting you right behind the bank so your risk is not very high to get your money, and I'm paying you 10% extra. So these conversations can happen if you agree a recoupment position to recoup right behind the bank. So the post-production service wants to secure your project early. So they want to make sure that they have hooks in you early on. That way they can know the pipeline, and that way they can also, if they ever need to get money from a bank for a credit line or something, they look at your production deal as a security for them to go get financing from a bank if they need to. Because a secured pipeline is the asset that the post-production house has, and that's what they build their business on. So it's very important for them to sign you up early and to do a deal with you early, and that's something you just need to know to negotiate an advantageous deal for you. They like doing deals with new producers because it's expanding relationships of people they haven't worked with before. And they know there's new producers coming up all the time. Content is needed. There's more of us out there now, and they want relationships with all of us. So it is good for you to say to them, this is a movie I want to do. If we do a good deal, I'm going to make all my other movies with you. I just want to make sure we have a good experience. So for them, it's really about doing a deal with you that they can repeat and for you to come back. So that's why they're very motivated to give you a great deal. When we talk about a music investment, the way they make money is by you scoring the movie in a way that gives them a lot of scoring time. So a music investment company would say, we need you to score at least 70% or 60% or whatnot off. I mean, if they know what they're doing, that's what they'll ask for. I have had contracts where that wasn't even mentioned, which is good. But the way how they make money is if a lot of scoring is in the film, it means a lot of royalties for them. So it is important for them to have original songs and original scoring in there. They're not making too much money on any of the licenses of songs that you just licensed that exist because they don't have publishing rights on those. but they make money on publishing rights of the newly produced songs and newly produced scoring. So that's what they look at. They also look at your distribution pattern. So they look at the sales agents like a bank would. Is it a bankable sales agent? Do they usually sell well? Because the more territories this movie is being sold into, or TV show is sold into, the more money they make. So if they see a project that's not commercial, where they don't know if it's going to be sold in many of the countries, then they're going to be hesitant with the investment that they're making with you. But if they see it's a commercial movie and they see a strong sales agent behind it, they are very likely to pay your entire music budget because they know they can get the royalties they want. So when we define, oh, come on now, seriously? I don't know what's going on with my computer today. So when we define profit, that's something to really think about when you do any deal with anyone. You need to know what profit definition you want to put into that contract. In general, it's pretty straightforward. It's all the expenses you have in relation to the production and distribution of your project. These are a wide range of expenses. Your job is for the contracts where you're benefiting to keep the definition wide. For the equity investor, for anyone you're paying, it's good to have the definition be wide. And that could be all negative costs and all distribution costs. For anyone that gets to deduct these costs from you, the definition needs to be very specific. It needs to say P&A cost and related expenses, this verifiable out-of-pocket distribution expenses, meaning what did you actually pay to your sales agent and is it verified? When you talk to investors, obviously you need to put in your collection agency fees. If that's applicable, you need to put that in. Bank loans, depending on who your contractual party is. Premiums, anything related to the cost of the investment that you're getting needs to be put in. And the job is really think about what does one want to charge and what does the profit, who does the profit definition benefit? If it's not you, if the profit definition does not benefit you, it needs to be very specific and it needs to literally write all these things down. If it is benefiting you, it can just be all negative costs related to the production and all costs related to the distribution of the project, including financing fees and financing costs, because you want to make sure you have those in there as well. So it really is important for you to define and cap expenses if someone else is benefiting from them. So if they are taken out of your revenues and out of your profit, you need to find a way to cap them. If you can make them a maximum amount with the sales agent, where you say, listen, sales agent, I'm paying you 20% sales fee, and I'm paying you a 1% distribution fee up to $100,000. And after that, I'm not paying anymore. So if you can cap it, that would be ideal. I've done it, I would say, in 60% of the cases on my movies. The first 40%, when I started out, I didn't know I could ask for it. So I didn't know. So I didn't ask for it. But then I figured out, I'm just going to ask for it. Let's see if they do it. And then I started asking for it. And every time I did, mostly I got it. But if I look at all my projects, the later ones, because I didn't ask for it in the first ones, because I too have a learning curve, wasn't there. So capping is something you need to really be aware of. When we understand the waterfall, we understand the deals and how we structure them and how we protect our investor and how we protect ourselves. So when we have parties in our waterfall, and all these parties will be in our collection agency management agreement. That is the agreement that basically is the heart of your production, that includes all the people that pay you money and that you have to pay money to. Everyone's included in this agreement. So it could be producers, the crew, the talent, service providers who deferred their fees, anyone who has a profit participation, any guild, any investors and financiers, any bank that is part of the collection, and of course, bond company and sales agent. Now, let me remind you that the bank has the option to not recoup from the collection account. I had a deal with Comerica where Comerica said, we're going to not recoup from the collection account. We have our own bank account. We want all distributors to pay us outside of the collection account, And then once our loan is paid back, all the monies can go to the collection account. This is okay for you because A, you save money paying the collection account agent, the collection agent, which is good. And B, you're not losing anything. So if the bank requires this from you, just say, okay, fine, you can recoup outside of the collection, that's okay. And the investors, they don't care because they see the loan agreement and they know the money has to go to the bank. They don't care if it goes to the collection agent or not. And the investor will even, you know, be okay with it because there's no collection agency fee deducted as an expense. So that's an okay thing for you to do. So if the bank does it, go ahead and do it. The waterfall describes how and when revenues are received and how and when expenses are paid, how and when and to whom they are distributed. The waterfall is managed by the collection agent and the collection agent management agreement. So what the collection agent does, they actually put together a literal waterfall. They put that together for you and they say, here's what the waterfall is, here's who gets paid, and then when it comes to producing the movie and then you're selling the movie and money comes in, they give you reports that connect with these waterfall line items, and they say exactly how much of this position was paid, how much of the next position was paid, how much of this position was paid. So everyone can see when money comes in, who's next in line. People love that. So these are the reports that you would send to your investors and say, look, here's where we are. We just made, you know, about $800,000 and here's where it went. It just went all to the bank because we're paying our loan back. And then they see, there's another 400,000 going to the bank and then I'm next in line. So they like this kind of stuff. So just make sure that you always share any report with your investor. Collection agents, I work with Vintage and Freeway. These are the two main companies in our industry. What they will do, they will actually give you a draft of what a collection agency agreement would look like for your movie. You obviously need to give them the terms. You need to tell them, here's my sales agent that I'm using, here's what he's charging. Here's, I think I'm going to put this much equity. If you don't have it yet, this is what they're charging. You can give them all the elements that you have and they can put a draft together for you. And then you can share that also with an investor and say, listen, this is what the collection agent agreement will look like. So you see how the waterfall is designed. Some investors love that. Some investors want to see how the money is flowing back and they want to see that early on. So don't be shy in contacting Freeway or Vintage to give you a draft of the collection agent management agreement once you have enough elements for them to do a draft. There is a draft on the module, so you can look it up, you can download it, and you can see what it looks like in a blank form. If there's some issue with downloading it, let me know. As you know, Canvas has its issues. And then I will send you a blank a blank comma. Here we have a theatrical movie. So we're looking at this and looking at, okay, hold on a second, what's happening here? When are we getting money? When are we seeing this? When we have box office revenues, which are here, coming from, oh my God, we have a theatrical released movie, which is, who knows if this actually ever happens these days, but let's say we do. And there's box office coming in. So box office revenues are nothing else but people buying tickets. They're buying tickets and these ticket sales are being registered as box office revenues. The first amount is split between the theater exhibitor first. So they get anywhere between, industry standard could be different, between 30 and 50% of the ticket. So that's gone. No longer available, already left the train. The next thing that happens, the balance goes to the domestic distributor or studio. They will get the balance of whatever the ticket sales are. They then pay all the P&A, right? If you are self-distributing, this would be you. If you do a freestyle release or if you do a forewarning, this is where you are. Just put yourself then in the position of the domestic distributor. Then you would pay the P&A. The distributor also pays the P&A. Or if they don't have a P&A investor, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's you that has the P&A investor. They also charge P&A, marketing fees, everything in the next applicable position here. And then they charge the MG that they paid you. If they bought the US rights from you and paid you a minimum guarantee, this is where they're going to charge it next. And all that is left then goes into the collection account. So only down here is when it goes into the collection account. The domestic distributor, if they have to pay SAG or someone has to pay SAG, in many cases they're paid right up front here. from whatever is due out of that territory. So they're kind of up in the earlier world here, if they're paid by the domestic distributor. If you pay them, you can sometimes push them down. We're talking about the gilts. It's not a very good picture. The picture is better on the modules, so just to know. If we pay SAC, we can sometimes have a conversation with them and say, we have a bank loan, we have people to pay, people to kill, we need to push you down. So you can have a conversation of pushing them down here to where the bank has been repaid. So some of these things are movable. That's why I'm pointing them out to you. But if it's paid by the domestic distributor, they just have to pay it. It just is. And then it is deducted from you. The balance then goes into the collection account. The sales agency fee, once you have money coming into the collection account, sales agency fee is paid. This is the foreign distribution revenue chain on this side, and this is the domestic revenue chain on that side. I should have said that in the beginning. So the sales agent is usually paid first. However, many banks require for the sales agent to defer their fees after the loan is paid, which would move the sales agent and expenses down here after the senior lender. So again, this is a position, sales agency fee and expenses, that can be moved down after the bank has been repaid. Collection agent will usually stay here. The collection agent will charge fees right away when collections are made and coming in. If the bank is not in the system, because we just talked about the bank being outside of the collection, then whatever portion was paid by distributors outside of the collection account is not going to be subject to a collection agency fee. So if this position is not in this chain and it's out here somewhere, this fee will be lower. Again, we're moving down in the chain. After the bank has paid, what could happen here is that you have to pay the deferments. So what you see down here after equity can go up if you agreed, and only if you agreed with the mezzanine lender and the equity lender, that you're allowed to pay the deferments after the bank loan has been paid. If you don't have anything in your agreement, this will be down here. So it's very important for you to remember that you specify in your agreement with the mezzanine lender and the equity lender that deferments are part of production costs and that they will be paid after the bank loan. The bank will likely not allow you to recoup deferments before the loan, so that's a conversation you could probably save your breath for. But the mezzanine lender and the equity lender understand the importance of production cost, and they might allow you to push it back up. So just be sure that you know that this can go up. Mezzanine lender recoups after the bank, and the equity lender recoups after the mezzanine lender. And everyone gets to recoup their premium as well, not just the investment, also the premium. And then the deferments with premium, I should have added that here, is being also recouped before you get into profit participations. So all of this stuff happens before you go into profit participation. Does anyone have a question about this waterfall?
I do.
Yeah.
So obviously one of the biggest lessons in this whole course is there's a lot of adaptability, flexibility, and negotiation. When you're talking about deferments and the bank not likely agreeing to be subordinate to them, in exceptional cases, like if you have a director who's willing to defer and usually wouldn't, would you be able to have some deferments before and others after?
Not with the bank. Unfortunately not with the bank, because what happens with the bank loan is you have to have a completion bond insurance in order to get a bank loan. And the completion bond insurance is going to look at exactly what are you paying, who are you paying, what is my expense, what is my strike price budget. And the strike price budget does not include these deferments. And the strike price is what the bank goes by. So they will not recognize your deferments as a production cost. That's the problem. However, there are companies that work like banks. They are actual funds. Like there is a company, I believe I mentioned it in the module called Silver Screen. It's actually also a German lady that runs this fund in Switzerland, in England. And they do give you bank loans and pre-sale loans. They basically do the same thing the bank does. And they sometimes allow you to deduct the deferments before. So if you're dealing with a fund that acts like a bank, there you can have that conversation and can ask for all the production to be repaid before the bank loan is repaid, before the senior loan is repaid. So you do have options when you use bank-like lenders that are not banks. So when you work with Union Bank, Comerica Bank, East West Mercantile, the answer is no. When you work with Silver Screen or 120DB, or there are other bank lenders, they always change names. So bank-like funds that give you a loan like a bank would, that's the kind of person you can have this conversation with, Arnold. Yes. Good question. Thank you for asking that, because I wanted to point that out. Anyone else questions about this waterfall? Okay, let's see if we can get to the next slide somehow. Oh my God, I hate this computer. Profit police. We talked about what the collection agents do and what they don't do. Here's something they don't do. While they receive all the revenues, they pay all the expenses, they pay all the premiums, they pay all the profits, they provide reports, and they ensure transparency, and they take away the headache of accounting for the producer and the liability, thank you very much, which is important too, because you never touch the money, so you're not liable for anything. Huge advantage. They also are something, it's a sales tool you can use with investors. Believe it or not, there are many producers who don't use collection agents. I don't know why. That 1%, really, are you that stingy? That just, it saves your life. You can have a collection agent even if you don't have a completion bond, even if you don't have a bank loan. You can have a collection agent just because you want to have a collection agent. You don't have to have any of the other things. You just want someone responsible to take the money and pay the people. The end. Do that. It's a huge advantage when you talk to investors, because they like the fact that you don't get your hands on the money, because they don't want you to be running with it, which happens all the time, believe it or not. So it's like an escrow company for them. It's like collection agents can be compared to escrow agents. They do the same thing, and they're very much about the law and doing it right. So there is no world where a collection agent runs away with the money, because then they're basically killing their business model and they'll never do a deal again. Investors love that. The collection agent is the kind of sales tool for you that basically says to the investor, remember how Hollywood is an area where you're dealing with pitfalls all the time and people taking money and running with it? Well, this collection agent will eliminate all of that, because there's no creative accounting possible with collection agents. It is what it is, and it's exactly how it's stated. There's no moving here, there's no doing here. They do what they're supposed to be doing. That's a sales tool you need to use to tell your investor there is no creative accounting applicable in your project, and they will very much appreciate it. That's why I want you to remember this, because it is something that will save you a lot of headaches and will enable you to include investors that might be otherwise nervous. So please use that tool. So this is kind of a slide that just kind of sums up what they do. You already know what they do, but you can use that also for your business plan that you're working on, if you're working on one. So that's why I wanted to put everything in one thing. Slate financing. Let's look at something a little interesting, because a slate means more than one movie. So if you put together your little production company and you're starting to do projects, what likely happens is you work on more than one project. You work on, you know, this development, that development, that development, and you might do a TV show, and you might do a movie, and you might do a documentary. You might do different things in your production company, because you're aiming to be a business. You're not aiming to be a one-time producer. That's just, you know, makes no sense. Anyway, you have an option to finance that company. You can finance your production company by doing a slate deal with an investor or a fund. The advantage for investors is obvious. They basically finance not just this one movie, but they finance your movie, your documentary, your reality show. They finance a slate of movies. Something tanks, something else makes more money. They have diversification. It's like a mutual fund where everything is like diversified. That's the aspect behind it. And investors like that. If you do a slate deal, make sure you mix and match the genres and what the things you do. Like my example, do a movie, do a TV show, do a documentary, maybe a reality show. Do things of different budget levels, because that will also show your diversity. Again, diversification helps the investor. when you do have more projects than one, in many cases, you can obviously negotiate better deals. You negotiate better deals with production crews, you negotiate better deals with guilds, you negotiate better deals with distributors, because they see you as a volume provider. They see you not as a one-time shop. They see you as someone who is continuously doing projects. And the one thing that your company does know how to do is create commercial projects, because that's what everyone cares about. It's a film, it's a TV show, it's a documentary, it's a reality show. All they have together is their commercial. If you can make that a reality, then you have a lot of advantages. But you have to stick to, I'm making commercial product, but I'm making this diversified product, but it's all commercial because it all goes to the same buyers mainly. And it follows the same rules, the same financial rules, because we're applying the same financial criteria to all of these products. They all have to meet these commercial criteria in order for us to make them. Because the finance plans we're working on, they pretty much apply for everything you do. The advantage is also in the financing cost. So when you do a slate deal with investors, they tend to be a higher volume. So meaning the investor would not just give you $1 million for your one-time movie, they might give you $15 million for all these things. And with a higher volume comes lower fees, because they're now amortizing their fees. So in the end of the day, you're saving money in doing the financing cost. Here are the cons. I've done slate deals because I owned a fund and I ran a fund, so I know exactly the pains and the not so great things about it. In reality, you have to put all these projects together, right? You're working on them parallel, yes, but they don't all go as fast as you want them to. So let's say you do a slate deal and the company that gives you the money says, we're going to give you the money on January 1st, 2022. You're like, great, I'm going to get $15 million on January 1st, 2022. And now you have to get all these projects ready by January 1st, 2022, because you need to get them started that year. That means you have to have a production volume in place that you can handle, ideally within that year, latest within the first 18 months. So you need to get your ducks in a row. You need to attach the talent in that year. You need to get all the showrunners ready. You need to get the scripts ready. You need to get the pre-sales done. You need to get all these deals done. Everything happens in a very fast amount of time. What happens when that happens, and we've seen it, is that quality suffers. You don't have time to really develop the script properly. I think every movie I've ever done, if I would have just had a little more time to develop the script, it would have been a better movie. I mean, I still made money with them, but Germans, perfectionists and all, I was like, I would have. So you're not going to have that much time. You're going to deal with actors saying, yeah, I'm not available in 2022. I'm available in 23, maybe 24. You're dealing with availability issues from actors. You're dealing with availability issues from showrunners. You're dealing with timing issues that might not be conducive to the fact that you have all this money on January 1st, 2022. But here's something to think about. If you have someone telling you, I'm going to give you $15 million on January 1st, 2022, you're now going to do the following. You're going to announce it in the press. Like the minute you sign the deal, that moment you become a player. That moment you become a serious financing institute. You basically become a financier because you have the money and you're the one financing it. That gives you an immediate recognition in the marketplace, and it's easier for you to start attaching these peoples, because now you're like, okay, well, look at the Variety article about me. I'm doing these 5 projects and I can pick and choose who I want to work with now. So it gives you some credibility that will help you with the timing crunch that you're dealing with. So just use the marketing as well, market yourself a little bit when that happens, to then help you with getting these things together. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, is what I'm saying. If you're dealing with changing legislation of production incentives that you're planning on doing the movie in, like we did the movie in Iowa, and 5 minutes later, Iowa was closed. Thank God we got it finished. But what would have happened if I structured it for Iowa, I got all the money ready, and before I start getting there on my day first, Iowa is closed. These things happen. So you're dealing with delays, some of which you can quickly change, but some of which you can't change. And then you have to figure out a way to, quickly problem solve. So when you do a slate deal, it is a good idea to do it together with an experienced partner that knows how to problem solve when these things happen. So it is a good idea to say, okay, I'm going to have a slate deal, but I'm going to partner up with a strong executive producer who helps me make all this happen. That's an essential element for you to have. It would probably also be essential for you to get the slate deal in the first place. So something to think about. Here's a little trick you need to know. The minute the entity gives you $15 million on January 1st, 2023, they're charging you interest. So you're paying for money you may or may not be using yet. That's called unused commitment fees. If they're gentle, they will say to you, well, we're going to make it an unused commitment fee because you're not actually using it instead of an interest. That's okay. So you're paying an unused commitment fee of maybe 1% or 0.5% instead of an interest of like 10%. So that's helpful. But you're still paying an unused commitment fee that has to come from somewhere. And unless you have a rich uncle somewhere, where's the money going to come from? You can't use it from the money that you're getting. That money has to come from somewhere. So you need a little more capital to be able to manage these fees. So the faster you go in production, the lower these fees are. So when I get someone to offer me, and I'm not kidding, a $200 million line of credit, as I call it, I had to decline it because there was no way I was able to pay an unused commitment fee of 0.5% if I'm not ready with these movies. Because to spend $200 million on production, you know how many movies that is? And especially if you're only financing 30% in equity, that takes a while. So that didn't work. So the idea here is when you get money offered to you as a slate, and when you can establish that, which is a good idea, make sure that you're not asking for too much money. Make sure that you're asking for just enough to make it interesting for the institution to give you money, because many of these institutions have a minimal threshold of the deals they want to do. So there are institutions that don't want to do less than 30 million. There are institutions that don't want to do less than 50 million. And there are institutions that don't want to do less than 5 million. So that's the people you go to. You go to the institutions that do a lower amount that you know you can handle. So ideally prepare your slate as best as you can, control the IP, and get as far as you can with the development, and then ask for slate deals. At that point, that makes sense. Any questions? Okay, that's good. You got it all.
No, I have a question. Hi.
All right,
How
Kelly. Yeah.
do the U.S. securities laws come into play with equity investors and slate financing?
Right. Good thing is you don't have to worry about it, because whoever handles that slate financing for you needs to be doing it in accordance with SEC rules and regulations. This is not something you can do yourself. You cannot create a fund and say, I'm going to be the funder, I'm going to put all these equity people in there. You're going to have to work with someone on that. And I think, Arnold, you're working on your PPM. I think, was it $5 million you can raise on your own?
Well, since we're doing a PPM and they're all accredited investors, it really could be unlimited, but also the new Jobs Act that people are using on the equity crowdfunding spaces have opened up a lot of stuff. There's definitely legal hurdles, and to make sure you're disclosing everything. But yeah, we're working with an attorney who's guiding the disclosures that are in the PPM. And then it used to be, I know this changed, it used to be you couldn't have more than a certain number of people. And if they weren't actively involved producing or making casting decisions, then it also adjusted it. But those all got a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay, so even with the equity investment, you need to make sure you're in compliance.
Yes, here's how that works, Kami. If you do this yourself, you have to basically make sure that anyone who invests with you is an accredited investor. And I think the definition for accredited investor right now is that they have to make more than 250,000, I believe, per year.
A few million, yeah.
Yeah, so look that up, because it changes sometimes. It's on the SEC website. The definition for accredited investors on the SEC website. So that's that. When you do a PPM like Arnold does, when you raise this yourself, I would always encourage you to work with a brokerage firm that has a license, because then they also take the risk. You don't. So you basically get the money through them, which is easier. You still get to meet your investors, and you can still, do your thing, but you're not as liable. It's really the brokerage firm that does the liability things on the legal side. on the legal side. Obviously, you have to do everything in accordance with the SEC, but you are not limited in any way. I know that when you do it yourself, there was a limit, I want to say, of $5 million that you can raise maximum, but these things change all the time. Another thing for you to know, in the US, and Arnold, thank you for mentioning this, when you have investors in your company and they can be seen as taking a real role, like you make them active, you send them the script, they can give you feedback on the script, and they should. You send them the budget, they'll give you feedback on the budget, even if it's asking questions. If they have an active role, by you communicating with them, they can actually deduct the entire investment from their tax return, which investors like, because it gives them a tax advantage. But that can only happen if they have a active role and are basically in a decision, they're involved in the decision making. So that means in very many cases that they have to get a producing kind of credit. And that's something you can do if you want to attract investors that want to deduct this investment from their taxable income.
Yeah, the other thing I'll put out there, because I see people do it in nonprofits wrong, definitely don't advertise on the internet unless you're working with someone very, very following any hoops. But putting things on the internet and who it reaches and how it can advertise is definitely restricted from PPMs. And in California, I've seen nonprofits do raffles, which you cannot sell raffle tickets on the internet, which is why you'll see people announce the raffle, but make you call in to buy your ticket.
Okay.
Interesting. So the SEC stuff, again, is changing all the time. If you have a lawyer that does SEC law, I always go to the SEC website and just see what's new, because they're changing, like Arnold was mentioning the Jobs Act. There are things like, there is now a thing called opportunity zones. Believe it or not, Hollywood is an opportunity zone. Opportunity zones are areas that are below, they're basically poor areas. I can't believe that they made Hollywood an opportunity zone. Anyway, in these poor areas, there are specialized tax advantages that investors get if they invest in companies located in an opportunity zone. The opportunity zones are also, I believe, announced on the IRS website, if I'm not mistaken, so you can look them up where they are. But just know, if you have an office in Hollywood, you're an opportunity zone. And anyone who invests with you in your company and does a deal with you, they now get to deduct all this from their taxable income. So taxes and how investors can reduce their risk by deducting the investment from their taxable income are important for many investors. So that's definitely something you want to look into if you want to go that route and raise the money this way yourself. That's something to think about. It's it's complex, but it's worth for you to dig into, for sure. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I think somebody told me once that if the equity investor owns the IP with you, then it might avoid some of the problems under the SEC.
It could be that. I mean, it's basically them having a active role, because they're involved in a business that they're actively, because if they own the IP with you, they own the IP with you. Exactly. I mean, it's basically they're investing in the IP itself and its cost to be made.
Yeah.
That would go in line with an investor has to have an active role.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Of course. So when you guys start working on your projects, some of you are doing the group project, or if you just do your own business plan, when you start putting your projects together, these are some of the things we've talked about in making sure that you have them in your business plan. You research financials, you research your competition, you obviously make sure you know your audience, your market, you know what your distribution pattern is. You talk about looking for incentive locations. You combine forces if you can with people that have done this before. Your vision is important as a producer. I don't underestimate how important your vision is, and of course also in combination with the director's vision. But investors do want to see how you see this path unfolding and how you see the content streamed on the big or the small distribution platforms. So you need to have a clear picture of what you're doing and what you want this to be. I would rehearse any pitch that you do. And I would always tell the investor why and how you have skin in the game. And the way you have skin in the game is this: you're paying for the IP already, because otherwise, if you don't have the rights, you don't have the rights. So you already have skin in the game the minute you pay an option fee. And you most likely handle all the development yourself, because you have to put it together to some place for an investor to be interested in it. So all these things you have to mention and saying, I myself invested this much money, and I myself will maybe defer, we can suggest to defer some of your fees in order to make this thing happen. Obviously be sensitive on how much you want to defer, because you also want to make some money. But skin in the game is always important for investors to know about. So anything you can mention that shows you already took a risk is going to be very helpful. The one thing I can stress enough, when you pitch something to an investor, it's a sales pitch that should not be longer than maybe a minute. I know this sounds harsh, but if you can get the elevator pitch down to that, or maybe 1 to 3 minutes max, just to get them interested, and then you can go into the conversation of having questions. I sometimes go in front of the mirror and look like an idiot, and I'm rehearsing my sales points, and I'm sometimes recording myself and playing it back to me to see if I would do it. I mean, it's a good little trick. I do this especially with content that is not easy to pitch, like a TV series. TV series is not easy to pitch to an investor or anyone, because they have so many complex elements to them. So for television series, I always kind of, rehearse. Movies a little easier, but it's a good little exercise to do. That's why I wrote it down here, to just give you some feedback on what it includes. The business plan inclusions. Here I put a little list together for what kind of should be in your business plan when you start working on your project. And yeah.
Question about business plans too. So many times now, everybody's referring to pitch decks interchangeably, but obviously is
a business. I talk about it. Yeah. Let me. Good question. To me, the pitch deck is basically the business plan. It's the business expose. There are two different audiences of a pitch deck / business plan. It's the same. In our world right now, in our financing world, the pitch deck is your business plan. If you pitch something to a content buyer, if you pitch to Netflix, Amazon, a network station, a studio, the financing component of this pitch deck is not relevant. Take that out. That pitch deck will include just content and packaging related items. And I think I have a pitch deck online that I share with you that is content. That's content.
Yeah, you have both, and even the attorney was saying do a pitch deck or a business plan, and I didn't. It's like, yeah.
It's the same. It's just you need to remember who you're pitching to. I sometimes change pitch decks depending on who I'm going to. I'm changing them all the time. If I'm going to a fund in New York and I know they want certain things, they want a certain kind of investment, I change it towards them. If I take I just did a pitch with a showrunner who was on Amazon because I want to put a show there. For her, I'm rewriting it as we speak. I'm not sending her what I have. It's like, now that I know what she wants, I'm just going to make it so she wants it. So, to me, they change all the time. So content is content for a person that you go to pitch the show to that you want to pay the entire show. No financing included here. If you're talking to investors, this is the shenanigans you're going to have to put in there, what's on this slide. So it's on one slide. You already know what it is. I don't need to go. I just wanted you to have it in one place, so you can look at after when you work on your little thing.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, our attorney was saying once we decide what percentage of equity someone gets, you can't change it for a different investor without disclosing it to everybody else who came in.
Yes. No, yeah, it has to be the same. That's true. Then you cannot change. But I don't do PPMs because I like to be flexible. But I think the PPN is, I've worked for a company that did PPMs and that's all they did. And they made a lot of money with it until all these boiler rooms got a bad reputation. And then they vanished. So at that point I was like, I think I'm going to stick to my, funding, working with like Wall Street and those companies, so I don't have to deal with PPMs. But it's a very good way to reach investors. There's nothing wrong with that. So when you're reaching out to investors, what they want to see is that you have your SPV in place. Your single purpose vehicle is in place, the rights are in there, everything is clean, everything is good. They want to know what they're investing in, so the legal stuff needs to be done. If you have a PPM like Arnold, share the PPM with them. You don't need one. Your business plan is going to be sufficient for the kind of investors we're going for. But if this investor that you're talking to says, you know, I really would like to see this as a PPM, do a PPM. They're boilerplate documents. I think you can even download them. You know, I mean, lawyers do them all the time. They charge between $10,000 and $20,000 for it. But, you know, there are so many of them available. You're paying more, Arnold? Don't pay more.
Less. No, I'm worth at way less.
Okay, good. Go to Arnold's lawyer and have him do it.
Yeah, he's an associate of Mark Litwack's too.
Good. Yeah, let them do it. They are boilerplate and they should be fairly easy for you to get done. So go to Mark Litwack's associate. You know, we have Mark Litwack videos on here, and I worked with Mark Litwack. He's a great guy. You can tell him that you took this class, and you know, maybe he'll give you a deal. Or you call Arnold, also good. Alternative investment offices are basically offices that they're like family offices. I've worked with those before. Again, they come through brokerage firms that manage those various family offices. These are wealthy families that diversify their portfolio, so to speak, and they sometimes look for what they call alternative investments, which is a high risk investment, which is what we are, movies. So these alternative investment offices, also family offices, they can be available to you. I would just go online and look, who are they, what do they do, and target them and just say, I'm a production company, I'm working on a slate of movies, I want to combine forces with your brokerage firm or with your firm. How can we get into business? What do you need? And then they'll tell you, I need a business plan that includes A, B, C, D, D, and then you make it so that they can actually do the work for you and with you. The thing with alternative investment offices and any kind of brokerage firm is that they want to see some performance. So in this case, again, you need to work with someone who's done this before, has ideally made some money with the movies. Because otherwise, how do they do the diligence on you? How do they sell you? They ask me when I work with these offices, they always say, so what movies did you do and how much money did you make? So every time I have to give them the information about what movies I did and how much money I made with the movies. I have to give them even phone numbers of some of the investors that invested into my movies. They do this kind of due diligence, so just be aware of that. There are online investor portals. I have to say I've never used online investor portals because some of them are pretty sketchy and I don't know what's real or not. They do exist, however, so it is worth researching them. I think I put a few in the module that I found that I thought were okay. And then you just have to do your own research. I can't advise you to do one or the other because I have no experience with those. I'm being very honest. Executive producer relationships will always be helpful. In the executive producers you find when you look at movies that you feel are similar to yours, and you look at the executive producer credits, many of the executive producers are actually connected to a financial institution or to a fund, because these people want executive producer credits. So you basically just go on IMDb, look at these names, and then put them into Google and see what companies that they work for. And that's how you know that they're working with the finance company, and then you can approach that finance company. There are so many finance companies and they change all the time. For me to list them all or to go on about them, this would be a conversation we could have for the next 3 years. So just look at the executive producer credits and see which of those people are actually connected to what appears to be a financing institution or a finance company. There are plenty of those. And those are the people that you go to. I'm going to go through this a little quick because you already know much of this and it's going to be detailed in the module. The main thing to know about brand entertainment is that you are going to need distribution to get brand integration financing. They need to know you're going somewhere. So unless you have a US deal in place or unless you have something in place that they know where you're going with this, brand entertainment monies are probably going to be harder for you to get. So once you have distribution, these are the people you want to contact. And then the next thing to know is don't work with anyone that is an advertising agency or someone that says that they can get you product placement who wants you to pay up front. So anyone who wants you to pay a retainer to get you to get brand entertainment money for you is a crook. Happened to me. I can tell you, even the ones that say, oh, we've done all these beautiful things. If they need money, that means that they don't know how to make you money because they get paid on the money they make you. So that is a red flag to me, and it should be a red flag to you. So if they really know how to get you money for your movie and they get a fat percentage, which is 25% in many cases, they shouldn't be asking you for money. They make enough money by just getting you money. So just keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that when you work with a brand, think about what is good for the brand. Don't think about what is good for your movie. You already know their money is good for your movie. They want to know that you include their brand in a way that helps them. Understand what they want, understand their message, understand what they need, and the faster you get the money. So these are just the two things to remember here. When it comes to free money, we have, of course, US incentives. And by the way, I updated the incentive thing, Arnold, thank you for that tip. And these change all the time. Incentives in the US are related to certain states, and those regulations change all the time. Just go to Entertainment Partner website. That's where I usually go to. Look at the incentive map, and you can go there. There is a link also on the module to something Arnold actually shared with me, which was great. I thought that was a great resource. But keep in mind, you need to keep yourself appraised of the changing regulations and just know what they are. The idea for you is to have an estimate established based on where you're shooting and what you're spending with your detailed budget. That estimate is established in the local region by someone who is a local accountant and works with the local incentive region. So it can't just be a line producer estimating what you're going to be spending and what you're going to be getting. It needs to be a local accountant firm that does this all the time, because the person and company that lends the tax credit incentive to you will not accept an estimate of what you're spending if it comes from you or your line producer. Research who the local people are, call the film offices, call the tax incentive offices. They will tell you who the people are that take your budget in hand and give you an estimate. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, but it's worth it. And then you know exactly to the dollar how much money you can get out of the incentive state if you do what you do with your movie and the budget you give them. So that's important for you to know in the US. And for international subsidies, it is really important. And by the way, you get all this. I'm going to send you this, so don't worry about reading all this now. Important for international subsidies is two things. There are two kinds of subsidies internationally. There is the kind that is automatic, works like a tax incentive like we have in the US. You go there, you shoot there, you get a percentage of whatever the eligible costs are, the end. There is a second layer to this. Many European countries have extra funding that is decided with a committee. And that's a cultural committee that every country has, that just looks at the content and saying, how does this enrich our culture, our local culture? And how is this benefiting to our region? So that thing is going to be a second layer of money that you'll get. And that is always easier achieved and gotten by a local producer. So it helps you to have a local production company to work with you. And then you give them a deal where you give them a percentage of whatever they raise for you, and then you let them go do their job. They should explain to you what they're doing and why they're doing it, so you learn about it. But it's not something that you need to dive into deeply to really understand, unless you want to have in the future a local production company in that region to do more. Then yes, you can start digging into it and make yourself a known producer in that country because you feel like you want to do more in that country. There are some countries that will give you the tax credit or give you the subsidies in accordance with the cash flow plan that you have for your production, which means you do not have to cash flow them. So keep that in mind, because though, like Germany, they just give it to you in installments. I think France, Italy do the same. Many of the European territories agree to give you money and then they pay it to you in installments. So you don't need anyone in between. You're saving money there to have to pay someone to cash flow this. This cash flowing thing works mainly in Europe. I don't know about Canada, but it definitely works in Europe. I've done it there. So you won't have anyone necessarily that you need to use to give you the money in advance. So these are the main things. There are treaty co-productions that you can do where, for example, Canada has a treaty with Germany. And what that does is the treaty co-productions do two things. They allow a higher rate of subsidies because it becomes like a very locally seen production. In Canada, for example, you have a lot of these content productions that get between 30 and 40, sometimes even 50% of the budget. A treaty co-production would fall into that space. So it's good to know what country has treaties with what country. And there are many treaty co-productions that you can look up on. Just know that that word treaty co-production means more money. It also means more money in licensing. Because when you have an official treaty co-production, the local country, like if you do a treaty co-production between Canada and Germany, the Canadian buyer, the Canadian network or studio, and the German buyer or German studio will be able to pay you a higher license fee because they pay more for locally driven content. So that's good to know because it makes you more profits when you license the content into a treaty co-production country. Yes, Arnold?
Is there a threshold? Like if you do a small portion in another country, does it knock onto those benefits?
If it's official treaty, you get both. If you do it under an official treaty co-production ruling, which you can, you have to shoot in both countries, of course. You have to shoot in Canada if you shoot in Germany, because otherwise there is no, But it would be a co-production between these two countries. You could do a shoot in Germany and you could do the post in Canada, treaty co-production. You could do a Canada shoot and you could do a Germany post. You can divide it up as you want, but this is up to you. But these two countries have a treaty, so you can use the treaty to your advantage and saying, okay, I'm going to do this in Canada, I'm going to do this in Germany, and now I want to get all the benefits the treaty gets me. And Canada has treaties with pretty much every country on the face of the earth other than the US. The US has treaties with no one. That's why there is no US treaty or no US, co-production. I mean, you have the tax credits. They feel like we give you so much tax credits in our states, we don't need treaties with anyone. So that's where that's coming from. Questions on this so far?
Hi, Jeanette. I have a question.
Yeah.
On the tax credit. So that free money, the incentive lenders, so like they are not repaid. Is that in a sense that they're not repaid by us, the production?
Correct.
But their principal, they will get it back. The money they lend us, they will get back from the local film office.
Correct. Very good question. Very good question. You do not, your loan with the tax incentive lender is a loan that is paid back by the tax incentive region. It is not paid back by you. So make sure that that loan agreement says that, because otherwise that'd be very wrong. Because because that means that the tax incentive lender, that the incentive region has to pay you first and then you pay the lender. Who needs that? Then the headache is with you. You don't want the headache of changing legislation. That's why you're using this tax incentive lender. You don't want to deal with Iowa changing its mind, New York changing its mind, now having, in New York, you have to pay 5 years now to get your money back. They're paid in installments. Who needs to deal with this? You don't want that. You want the tax incentive lender to deal with all that, and that's why you pay these high fees to them. Let them do their work. You pay zero, zippo, nothing, zippo, zero. Nothing to these people. They deduct their fee up front, you get the money from them, conversation is over. And if they come to you and say, it happens, the legislation had changed and now we have to sue the legislation and we want you to participate in the lawsuit, your answer is no, not my problem, your problem. They will try this because it's just how it is.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. Obviously, you guys know Kickstarter and GoFundMe and all these places where you can do crowdfunding. Feel free to check them out. To me, it's a lot of work, but I think it is okay to do for small projects. I've seen people that do this and they make good money on these Kickstarter websites. My budgets are usually higher, so I don't ever get to benefit from this. Crowdsourcing is something that I'm very familiar with on Stage 32, for example. And that's something you can do where you can, find people to help you with your project free of charge and, take a certain position on your team and then maybe get paid nothing or a back-end participation or a lower amount or something. So just remember the difference between the two. Sourcing, meaning you get some services provided to you. Crowdfunding is you get actual cash. Now the crowdfunding and the crowdsourcing should both not be monies that you have to repay. So that's my understanding of most of these websites. Now there might be websites out there that I don't know about right now as we sit here today. There might be crowdfunding websites that require you to pay them back. Just make sure when you research these things, you figure out, is this something I need to pay back, or can I send them a t-shirt ahead and a visit on my set? Try to figure out what you need to do. And there are so many more of these that there are very different rules and regulations as to what they want and what they want you to do. again, there's so many that we can't spend all our time to go through all of them and the different rules. That's a Google job for you. We talked about free money as royalty-based investments. Again, this is money you do not pay back. They give you the money, they pay the music budget, including your music editor, including your license fees for songs that you want to use that are famous songs, including your scoring, including your music composer. Anything related to your music budget is going to be paid for by them in return of you releasing all the music royalty rights to them. Plain and simple. And then what else did we have in kind? We talked about the in-kind service deals earlier, post-production VFX houses. Make a deal with them, see how much they defer, and make sure they defer at least 50% of whatever your post budget is, and then you're in good shape. Visual effects is a little different. If you have a visual effects driven movie and the visual effects are big, they're not likely to defer 50% simply because they have to do the work. They have to build what they call the assets, meaning the visual effect sequences, and they have to pay people to do it. So if they defer something, it might be 20%, 30%. It might not be a 50% component, but sometimes it's worth it, especially when you have a visual effect driven film like a science fiction or someone, or like a period piece where you need to build, you know, sets that look like the Tower of Pisa when it was burning down or something like that, that you don't want to build. So those ways save you money, but just know that the visual effects companies will not likely defer as much as post-production houses. Let's talk about some of these producers. Here are the producers. There is a code of producer credits that I actually have online for you that the PGA has printed out for us to look at. However, it's a guideline, and that's great, but there are 1,000 different people that want credits. Everyone who does something or lifts a finger on your movie wants a credit. And I want you to know what credit you can give and what you shouldn't be giving. This is really the exercise here. The producer credit in film is the highest credit you can give and hold. The producer credit should not given to, it should never be given to anyone other than yourself who owns the IP, and maybe someone who brings you a lot of money or packages the whole thing for you. You know, that would be the only two assumptions where I would say, okay, that they get a producer credit because they're really making your project possible. Short of that, no one gets a producer credit on your film. Just be very careful with that. You can share other credits, and we'll talk about them in a minute, but the producer credit for film, no. For television, a little different. The producer is more like a hands-on kind of person, comparable to like a UPM or a creative producer. They work under the executive producer, who has the role of the executive producer. And we'll get to that in a minute. So it's more like a hands-on person that does stuff that the executive producer wants them to do. It's a practical job that entails everything about realizing the content, packaging also, but realizing the content under the guidance of someone else who's basically doing the producing job in television. In film, you do everything. In film, it's the person that owns the IP, that develops the project, that finances the project, that does everything, that controls everything, and has the last say about anything that happens. That is why legally that credit needs to be protected, because the minute you give the credit to someone else, they have rights. And they can say to you, I'm a producer on this project. I don't want to do this deal with the sales agent that you're thinking of doing. I don't want to. And that's a problem. So that's why keep the producer credit to yourself. And if someone demands it, like if I would come and do a project with you where I have to put the money in and I have to help you with cast, I would say, okay, let's do a deal. It's a co-producing deal that we do, where I would say to you, I need control over certain things if I finance this, because I want to make sure I'm protected and my investors are protected. And I will specify what I need control over. So if you give a producing credit to someone, specify what they are allowed to approve and what they're not allowed to approve. So that becomes a co-producing agreement where you really define the role of this person very clearly and their rights, their approval rights. So be very careful with giving this credit to anyone. What it entails is on here. You can read that when you have a moment. Co-producer. The co-producer is basically similar to the producer credit, but it has a lower value as a value chain. The co-producer is someone that can help you with casting and doing other things, but they don't really have the approval rights the producer would have. So that's a credit you can give to people that give you something that puts your project forward, that advances you in the process in any shape or form. In the film, it could also be someone that you doing a deal with in a treaty. Yeah, when you do a co-production treaty, if you go to Germany, you shoot. If you go to Italy, you shoot. That kind of co-producer there, who has the local responsibility, is also a co-producer. So there's two kinds. One you use to get money out of another country, regular co-producer that take on all the responsibilities for their territory and they handle the production locally. Of course, with your input, you will be there and you make all the final approvals, but they have the say on what's happening locally in the physical production and what's happening locally with the money that comes in. You decide where it's going because the production is still under your thing, but they have a say in what's happening locally. The second part of the co-producer is someone who just helps you in the process of making things happen. And that could be anything from casting, from funding, getting you a distribution deal, just opening a door somewhere, maybe getting you an agent, whatever the level of things is that they're doing. It's a little similar also to like an associate producer, but it's a higher level credit for sure than an associate producer, but it could be important what they do to, it's not as important what they do. It's a credit that you can be somewhat generous with, not entirely. They still need to give you value. So whenever you do a co-producing deal that is not a treaty co-producing deal, I mean, in any deal, you always want to make sure that you put exactly in what you want them to do and exactly what they want to get for that. When you do a co-producing deal with someone that's helping you putting a project together here in the US, really specify what they're doing and what they should be delivering to you. It is essential for this because you want to pay them for something that they're actually doing, and you want to pay them only if they're doing that. So be specific. What is the role that this person is taking? What do you expect them to provide you? By when do you expect them to provide it to you by? Put a date in there. All these contracts need to have expiration dates, so you don't connect these people to your project forever. Just say, this project is valid, this thing dissolves on day so-and-so. You know, give it a year term or something. But don't let it go on and on and on, because these people will stay attached to your project if you don't put a date in when this expires. So these are the things co-producers can do, and make sure that you that you keep that in there. Executive producers. There are different roles of executive producers. Executive producer can be someone who just gives money. Could be a banker, could be an equity financier, could be a lender, could be a tax credit lender. Anyone who gives you money could ask for an executive producer deal. Anyone in the financial world for a film and for television. There's a second level of that. For television, when someone gives money, I always push them down to co-executive producer because I don't want them to have the executive producer credit. The executive producer credit in television is the most important credit you can get. It's the credit that holds all the cards. It could be a creator, it could be someone who is a showrunner, it could be, it's the person that makes all the decision. So that's not a credit you want to give to anyone in TV. TV, just moving to co-executive producer. If they want executive producer credit, just say your co-EP, EP is not available for this. And I always use the excuse, maybe this is even wrong, but right, and saying the network will not approve this credit because you're not an executive producer in the eyes of the network. I use that, so far it worked. So, and I totally made that up, by the way. I don't even know if that's the truth or not. And maybe it is. So for you, the job is keep him out of that realm. For the film, it is in perfect condition to say anyone who gives you a significant amount of money to get an executive producer credit. Significant means it should be at least a third of your budget, to me. If someone gives you 20% and you decide to give an executive producer credit, okay, you can do that, it's up to you. But to me, it really means they have to give you a real, 20% for a tax credit lender also works. 20% for a bank also works. I'm talking about equity. If someone who's an equity player wants an executive producer credit, it starts at 30%. Otherwise, they become co-executive producers in that sense. Now, the tax credit lender, which is usually around the 20% range, the bank is usually around that range, they want to be executive producer even though they're in the 20% range. Mezzanine lenders, if they give you 5 or 10%, sometimes also want executive producer credit. I would try to push them to co-EP if you can, but you can give them executive producer credit. It is a credit that's often seen to be dealing with the financial aspects or the distribution aspect, and that's the other side of the coin. The network executives, studio executives, sales agents, all of these people sometimes require executive producer credit because it's also a credit that's seen on that side of things. So just to give you an idea how that works. Someone who wants to lend you their name to make the project happen could also be an executive producer because that person opens doors, helps you to get your cast, helps you to get financing, even though they themselves don't give you actual cash. They make all the things happen for you that leads you to getting cash. That's also okay to give them an executive producer credit. Those are the kind of things you need to know when you give this credit, okay? Now, co-executive producer is basically the mini version of the executive producer in the finance world. A broker, like a finder who finds a guy that has the money, is a co-EP. We sometimes work with these brokers and finders who lead us to a financing source that we didn't know before. We give them a co-EP credit. So that's normal in the film world. It's similar to the TV world. However, the co-EP there could also be someone who's connected to the executive producer on a creative level. So a co-EP could be someone that wrote a portion of the Bible, or that wrote a Bible, or that wrote some of the scripts. Someone who has a lot of creative input in a TV show would hold a co-EP credit, just to keep your mind. So in the television world, it's a credit that's connected to the creative part and the creative storytelling and the creative world of the TV series. In the film world, the co-EP credit is connected to the financial world. It could also be connected to the distribution world. It's basically the cousin of the executive producer in the distribution world. Maybe your sales agent says, I'm okay with the co-EP credit. Maybe a buyer says, I want a co-EP credit, that's fine. If they don't push for EP, they might push for co-EP. So there are co-executive producer credits that are given to people in distribution. This is a credit you can be generous with in the film world, not in the TV world. So you can say to someone, you know, you really did some great work. I'd like to give you a co-executive producer credit. So that's a credit you can give. You don't have to hold back on that one. In film, when it comes to a supervising producer, they have different roles depending on who is sending them or who is engaging them. A supervising producer could be someone who just watches the production, the physical production aspect to make sure everything is in line with what it needs to be. Bond companies sometimes send out supervising producers to make sure that the production of the film goes in line with what the elements are that were bonded, the bonded budget, the bonded cash flow, the bonded production schedule. So they might send supervising producers. Or a studio, when they produce something with you and you have a deal with them, they might send their supervising producer. It's also sometimes the executive in charge of production that then becomes a supervising producer credit. So it is basically people that need to oversee a production and want to make sure the production goes the way it's planned that are called supervising producer. It's very much geared toward more of the physical production. It could be geared in television also towards physical production if it is something that the network feels they need to double up on, or they want to just have someone there to watch over the money. It's very often related to what's happening with the budget, what's happening with the movie and the schedule, is everything in line. So it's a physical production element in many, many, many cases. That's a credit I've rarely dealt with to giving to anyone, honestly, because it doesn't apply. I do the production, I have line producers, I don't need it. But if someone comes to you and says, you know, I want to help and I want to oversee this and I want to credit as a supervisor, you can just be generous with that one. So that you don't have to hold back on either. Line producer is a very specific role. That is the person that is responsible for your budget and the holding of the budget and your production flow. These are people that manage basically everything that's going on financially on your set and all the things that happen on your set in relation to the budget. This is the person that reports to the bond company. This is the person that reports to the studio or the streamer or the network that you're doing a deal with. These are the people that make sure, and their job is on the line if they go over budget. So they're very, very, in many cases, very nerdy people that, to me, they are basically glorified accountants, but they do know a lot about production. They know that if you put a huge setup, like I'm shooting this scene where there is a car chase, and now you need a camera on the car, you need a rig, you need da. They know exactly what that entails financially to shoot the scene. That's how production savvy they are. And they just might say to you, this scene is not going to be shot the way you want to. I'm not giving you a rig. I'm not giving you this. Not going to happen. Stay within your range, figure it out a different way. So they pose challenges to the production team and the director, even to the producer, in saying, you don't have money for this. Figure it out a different way and come back to me and give me another idea. So they watch over what I do as a producer and what the director does, which is kind of great. Even though they're paid by me, they keep me on my toes and saying, Jeanette, great idea, not happening. So I need these people because I get very inventive when I'm on a set. I see all kinds of things that I want that are not there or not budgeted. And that's, you get excited. Of course, everyone is on a set gets excited and you want to make things better. And sometimes it's okay to make things better, but then you have to save the money somewhere else. And then you're going to tell the line producer, I'm using this money here to make this scene better, and I'm going to take it out of costumes. Can I do that? And they're like, okay, fine. Now you have $5,000 left for costumes. All good. So these are the conversations you're having with the line producer. That's a specific job description that you're going to deal with. Associate producer is basically someone who helps you with anything. Maybe they find you a casting director. Maybe they are the casting director. Maybe they are a line producer who wants a different title and want to have an associate producer credit because it's a different kind of credit that leads more into the producing world than the production world. Sometimes line producers want that. Line producers can also sometimes ask for a co-producing credit because they want to lean more into the producing side than the line producing side. So those are the kind of credits you can massage. Associate producer could be someone who just brings you one actor, who brings you a location that you really want and they get it to you for cheap. They bring you maybe a director that they just worked with and you're like, oh my God, I didn't think of this person. This is a great idea. They bring you maybe some money. Maybe they bring you a brand integration. They bring you all kinds of things that are useful. But again, they need to be specified. So if you do a deal with an associate producer, figure out what it is that they can bring you and then put that in the contract. You can be generous with this credit. Even sometimes an investor would want something like this, like a smallish investor would say, oh, I'm giving you a little bit of money for development. Can I have an associate producer credit? So there's that. Creative producer. We hear this a lot. And this is basically someone who is very much involved with the actual storytelling of your project and the packaging. So the creative producer is someone who really is about how do we develop this to be optimum? How do we optimally package this to really get most out of this role? They are responsible for what's on screen later. So they make sure that all the elements are in place to have the project be the best it can be. So creative producers are very story driven. They are, for film and television, very much into the work of what's been written, what's being developed, and then manage the development process, long or the short of it. So you don't necessarily need someone like this. Now, if someone comes to you and says, I really want to redo that script and I have a writer for you that I want to work with because I think this needs to be done, this has potential, but it's not really using its potential. I want to take that script and I want to work with a different writer. Can I do that? That is something then you can say, okay, fine. If you get the project to the writer and they make a better choice of it, you can get a creative producer credit. That's kind of where this is going. So this is kind of the sum up for today. Do we have any questions about our group project? And do we have any updates on this?
We had a meeting at 11, but we're postponing it because this went long. But no, our group project's working well. I do have a comment on the titles too, just in the spirit of everything else.
Yes, please. Yeah.
You could also make sure to assess whether it's in the main titles or in the end cards and the position, and whether it's shared credit or single credit, all of which become a higher value to the individual.
Right. Anna, very good point. Many of the networks will decide where the credits go. It's not really, meaning the buyer decides where the credits go, right? I mean, you can say to people, you're going to be in the front, you're going to be in the end, but in the end of the day, you always have to say in the contract, subject to network or distributor, or subject to distributor approval, because they want to have the freedom of placing the credits the way they want to or not. Now, I always tell people no front credits. The only front credits I give is director, writer, if I can. I try to, and lead actor. And of course, me, myself, and I. But everyone else goes to the back. I want to have the, if I want to push him later to the front, I'll do, and I'll be nice about it. But in the end of the day, I always say end credits, single card, you're on a single card by yourself or your shared card with someone. I decide what that is, and I'll tell them what my feeling is about how the credits work, and then they can bark at me and maybe we'll have a conversation about it. But I usually name automatically, I name them end credits automatically, because
WGA and DGA have.
Yeah, you know, I know they do, but with all that's going on streamer, I mean, you see how they have no credits many times, they just go into it. And if I have a contractual obligation to someone in a front credit, I shoot myself in the head every time I see that thing come up on screen. So, and it becomes a legal battle if you do. So I try to A, say network approval always, and B, just put it into end credits. Any other questions so far on what we've seen or what the project is that you're working on?
Yeah. Is it? Do I? Okay. Yeah, I thought it was mute. So yeah, Janet, I have a question about the role of a producer director. So I know that I mean, I know that there are many. I want to be a director producer, but the thing is that I know that that being in two roles is very. I mean, it's not feasible at first having two big roles. So, do you think it's better to have a line producer as a help or another actual producer?
For you, so
exactly.
you're saying I'm doing this movie and I am the director, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would, in that case, get a line producer who is also good as a producer. I would double up the role.
Okay.
Was to get the best of both worlds. So make him responsible for running the set, but also if there's contractual things that need to be dealt with that you haven't dealt with before you started shooting, let them deal with that.
Okay.
The main thing for you, and I think we talked about this, is that once you are in pre-production, you need to stop your producer brain from working. You need to become the director. Otherwise, your film will suffer, because it's very hard to keep the creative brain and the organizational brain going at the same time. It's because it's literally two different parts of your brain. And inspiration happens as you when you turn on your creative brain and you just stay there in the flow the entire time, you're going to be a much better director because you see more things. You can see how a scene unfolds. You can see how the actors perform. You can just be more in tune by the visuals of it all. It's a different kind of brain that you need to turn on to make this the best product it can be. And this is all creative. You need to forget your producer being in that moment, because your job then is to make the best movie possible, and you don't give a shit how much it costs, and you don't care how it gets there at this point. That's why you need a strong line producer and partner in saying then at that time, this is not going to work. You have to come up with a different creative solution. So they need to keep you in check as a director. And then you have the director conversation with them and saying, hold on a second, what? But you need to let them be honest. They need to be strong personalities. They cannot be, you cannot like micromanage them, and you cannot overwhelm them. They have to be okay with saying no to you, because obviously this is your project and you're still the lead producer. That's why you have to be okay with, they have to be okay with telling you no, because that's going to be hugely helpful to you.
Okay. Yeah? Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
And you are the producer until you put it all together, because it is your project. So the putting together part is perfectly fine to do by you as a producer. So you can do that, and you can be the writer. You can get both credits. It's fine. And you're going to do the work of putting it together. But once you've put it together, forget about everything that relates to producing and just stick to directing. That goes all the way until you deliver the movie. This is including post-production. You do not turn your producer brain on the minute pre-production starts and you have delivered your movie. You're not producing.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette.
Any other questions?
Hi, Jeanette. So how was your experience for producing your first project, and what are some of like notes that you take yourself after that first project? What are some, like must-haves or must-dos? What are some like must-don'ts?
Yeah. So when I produced my first project, I don't know if I shared this on Canvas or not, I had not known of completion bond companies. We don't have those in Germany. In Germany, I produce a project for a network and that's it, and they pay me and I'm done. Or I produce it for a studio, they pay me and I'm done. Yes, I'm developing everything and I put everything together, but I don't worry about a completion bond insurance. Completion bond insurance can be invasive. So I went on, started producing, go on my set. The first thing I noticed was that many people were just sitting around and not doing anything. And that's the case because it was a union production and people can only do what they're assigned to do in this country. In Germany, they do everything. I mean, it's like, you don't see people sitting around. They just do, they do. Here, it's a little different. So I had to get over myself in seeing people sitting around and smoking because there were grips and there was nothing gripping going on. There were camera people and we were just setting up and there wasn't anything for them to do. So that's the first thing. But what was really, what broke me a little bit was the fact that I brought a director from Germany who had never done a completion bond project either. So it was the blind leading the blind. So she started shooting and she took her sweet ass time in setting up her scenes. First day, we're delayed. Second day, we're delayed. Third day, we're delayed. We're not getting any. I'm like, we're not even shooting 3 minutes a day. I said, Sharon, snap out of it. We need to get this going. Oh, we'll deal with it later. So in Germany, you deal with it later, or you shoot it whenever, because there people also stay longer. If I don't get a scene done, and if my work day is not 10 hours but 16 hours, the Germans go with the flow. They stay. Americans don't do that. After 12 hours, it's bye-bye, or you pay a lot of money, a lot of money, like overtime. And the bond company showed up. I think it was day 5 or I think it was after the first week. They showed up and they said, so all week you were late. We saw the production report. You were delayed every day of this week. How are you going to fix this? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'll just, do it later. They stay longer. No, it's no such thing. I'm like, what do you mean there's no such thing? Well, if they stay longer than 12 hours, you're going to pay them double. You pay this, and then we have a budget overage. How's this going to work? It was, and I didn't have an answer right that minute. And I was like, oh my God. And they said, we need an answer within 24 hours on how you're going to fix this, how you're going to make up this time without us paying any extra money. And if you don't give us an answer that we're happy with, we're coming in, we're taking over the movie, and you're done. This is how serious it was. I had no idea. I'm like, holy shit. So Sharon and I, we sat there, we started rewriting the script, we kicked out scenes. Oh my God, I can't do this. I mean, if you watch the movie, you'll see it's painful. Because there was an underwater scene we had to cut down so badly that you can see it's really, I mean, you just watch it for the heck of it. It's called Timeshare. It's actually on Freeform right now. I did it for Disney, ABC. Anyway, they were the US partner. It's a cute movie. But there is so much that we had to change to make up that whole week because we were only shooting for I think it was 28 days or was it 21 days? I think it was 3.5 weeks or something. So it's a short amount of time anyway. And we were shooting with A-level actors like Nastasia Kinski and Timothy Dalton. So these people needed to be wooed, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I had to come up with a solution for the bond company. We cut scenes, we cut setups, and we basically redid the entire schedule for the next 2.5 weeks. That was number one. They accepted that, and it was fine. They did fire my line producer, though, because clearly the line producer didn't know what they were doing, and they made me hire another line producer. So that did happen. So the line producer was bye-bye, because the line producer clearly didn't have any, they couldn't get us in line, literally. So they were gone. So they gave us someone, and I was okay with the person that they gave us. It was fine. I got along with them. The second thing was, what also doesn't happen in Germany, the cast here, they're a little bit more like babysitting. There's a little more babysitting work involved. Timothy Dalton showed up one day and was very upset because he was driven in a car where his knees touched the front seat. I'm not kidding. He was totally bent out of shape because he was in the back of a car and the knees touched the front seat. And I was like, are you in? And I even said that to him. I said, did you get up this morning with the wrong cup of coffee or something? Came out of my mouth, didn't mean to say it. It was so bad. Timothy was so upset. He called the studio executives from, at that time it was Fox. That guy came in and said to me, you can't talk to the cast like this. I'm like, the guy just told me his knee was touching the front seat. Do you know how many problems I have with the bond company here right now? This is not a problem I want to deal with. This is ridiculous. And he said, you have to deal with cast differently. You cannot yell at them and say, did you have the wrong coffee this morning? That's not how this works. I'm like, this needs to be how this works. And he said, not how this works. The guy will walk off the set. You're not going to have a movie. And I'm like, oh no. So I had to go to Timothy Dalton and had to apologize for telling him, please, you know, drink your coffee differently in the morning so I don't have to deal with your little bullshit. Happened. Nastasia Kinski comes to me and she says, I don't want to do the kissing scene. I don't want to do the kissing scene with Timothy Dalton. And I'm like, that's an important scene. And it's not just a kissing scene. They both were naked in the shower. So it was a very intense scene. I don't want to be naked with this man in the shower. I'm like, Nastasia, it's in the script. We're going to have to do it. We're not going to see you. There's no body parts because it's a Disney movie. You know, it's not, no one's going to see anything, but you got to get your butt in there. I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, fine, we need to figure this out. So I talked to Timothy. I said, you know, Nastasia is not comfortable going into the shower with you. I think, you know, I don't think it has anything to do with you. It had everything to do with him. It has anything to do with you. But I think we're going to have to use a double. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, you know, I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, well, you know, I don't know, should I be taking this personally? I mean, he was all, again, very out of shape. I'm so sorry. We'll figure it out. It was a whole thing. And then Timothy insisted on, in exchange, we don't get anything for free with this guy. There was a scene where he was doing something very funny. He wanted to be very funny in this movie, and he's hilarious in this movie. He wanted to be funny. That's why he did the movie, because he was known as James Bond, very serious roles. He wanted to be funny. There is a scene, I want to be naked in the scene, and all I want to put in front of me is the lid of the bath mat. And I want to be jumping around in the scene naked with just the lid of the bath mat in front of my genitile. And I'm like, okay, this is how it's going to play out. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. So I said, Timothy, we're going to shoot it. I cannot promise it's going to make it into the movie because it's not in the script. And I don't know how the studio will react to this, but we'll shoot it. We shot it and it's hilariously funny. So we kept it in and it's like, okay, great. This was a good idea. So sometimes things happen that, you know, are actually helpful. Other times I had to learn to become a mommy of actors and deal with actors in a very diplomatic way. Diplomacy is not my strong skill, I have to say, but I had to learn that. So that was my one thing that I had to learn. I had to be un-German and very diplomatic and not straight with them and just, you know, baby them every time. I drove Nastasia home pretty much every night to make sure she's okay. Drove her all the way to Bel Air every day, Malibu, Bel Air, every night. And we had a great exchange. And with Timothy, I think he's still not quite happy with me. I don't know if I fixed that one, but we got good performance out of him. So there are some people that you can warm up to. There's others that will never forgive you. The first thing you said on you know, it was bad. It was a bad start with him, and I was never able to make up, honestly, on that film. And that was the hardest thing for me to do, the mentality change, because where I come from, people just say things the way they are and they just do and that's it. There's no like this ego nonsense. Here, actors are very ego driven. They want to be seen as, I mean, they are special people and they make the value of a movie. They should be treated special. It's absolutely correct. I just didn't know. So there was that. So that to me, the Bond company taking over my movie and, you know, not dealing with the actors, which both are very significant things that could have derailed this entire movie, were good lessons to learn in the beginning. Yes. So those you know, the one thing I'm going to share with you is the studio ended up not wanting to pay me. The Bond company didn't want to pay me the last portion of my producing fee. And the studio, both studios, Constantine and Fox, said, yeah, you know, we're gonna just keep that, and we're just gonna see if we need that later for something, which is, by the way, not something that was entirely agreed upon. I didn't remember giving any of my money for anything. So I was not happy with that. And at the time we shot the movie on a film reel, you know, it was like a big film reel and it was finished, it was edited, the film reel was in the laboratory. And somehow I helped make its way from the laboratory into my fridge in the house. So it disappeared. So I get frantic calls from both studios and saying, where's the movie? What happened? I'm like, well, I don't really know what happened. Well, you took it. We know you took it. Well, is my signature on the lab access letter? No, it's not your signature. We don't know whose signature it is. Well, I didn't take it. I don't know. And then I said, well, maybe my memory would be jogged a little where it might be if I get my producing fee paid. The money was in my account within 24 hours. The movie was back in the lab within 24 hours. I don't suggest you steal the negative. But I felt very mistreated by these two. And this is still a story that talked today at Konstantin. I had Martin Moskowitz in one of my classes. He leads Konstantin. He was at UCLA. He was a guest speaker, so he's over it. But he did mention, even in that class, when he was talking to 150 of my students, this producer over there, she's a special one. We still have a story to tell about her that never anyone pulled on us. So I'm not saying you need to go as far as stating the negative of the movie, but as a producer, you sometimes fight against the elements, and people out there are not gentle. So just be aware that they can be pretty drastic with you, even though you hold all the cards and even though you have all the responsibilities. There are methods that people can put upon you, and there are a gazillion of them, that will require your strength and your problem-solving skills, for lack of a better word. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for sharing. Those are like fantastic stories. It's hilarious.
Can I ask you like a super quick follow-up on that?
Please.
Like, how do you stand your ground when it's about your fee? Because a lot of times when the budget is very small, the first thing an investor would say, and also director like came up with the story and is developing with you, and it's happened with me many times. It's like, well, if you believe in the film, your fee would cut some of the budget and we can make the film. But again, I need to pay my rent and eat, and like, how do you stand your ground and keep your fee?
Well, I always say to people, I said, if I don't pull all the strings together in making this film possible with you, the director, and with you, the investor, you're important. There's no doubt about it. But there's other important elements that I have to pull together that require my constant attention 24/7. I'm not doing this for free. And you shouldn't be asking me to do this for free. I do a very important job in making this project happen because these are my rights and I paid for those, and I already invested money in this to get it to the point where it is now. I have to put up a lot of time to make this happen. You do your part, but my part is essential in making all of it happen. And this is what I'm charging for it. It is what it is. There's no negotiation grounds. And if I can make the movie happen with my fee the way it is, it's my responsibility to make it happen, because if it doesn't happen, it's also not happening for me. So you can trust my managerial skills and my budgetarial skills in making sure that I'm not asking for too much. I'm asking for just the right amount that is industry standard, that is applicable to the work that I'm doing. Stand your grounds in reminding people that without you, there is no project. Because there isn't. And you're hiring them and you're paying them, so they need to get in line. Yes, of course they ask. They always ask. Everyone always asks. Yeah. And I say, no, it's not happening. They always ask. And you know what? In the end of the day, if I feel like it, in the end of the day, I'll always give in a little. But it's because I choose to. It's because I want to make it happen. It's my decision. It's not someone pushing me. It's not someone asking me. If I feel it's the right thing to do, I do it. But I'm not going to be devalued only because these people think I'm not, because what they're basically saying to you is you have less value. That's what they're saying to you. And you can tell them, I'm not letting you devalue or my role devalue. That's the answer I use. So stand your grounds with that.
Thanks.
God, we had a long class today. Wow. Yes, Arnold. So sorry, guys. The poor people that have to watch the recording. Oh my God.
Thank you so much.
Though? Of course. Arnold, did you have another question or were you just waving?
I was waving to say thank you. And
thank you guys, everyone. Go home now. Enjoy.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you,
Jeanette. See you.
Have a good day.
Hey, Jeanette.
Bye.
So for office hours, should I join
we'll just stay
on this link?
I'm gonna end up and I'll just go back in. For anyone who wants office hours, I'm gonna just keep this on. I'm gonna go out now. I think some of you already made appointments with me. If anyone wants anything, just email me quick and I'll plug you in if there is a spot. I'm gonna basically stop the recording and then go on again for office hours.
Awesome. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Again. Bye.